Good afternoon, buenas tardes, and welcome to the October 10th Board Business Meeting. Welcome to our board members, MCPS staff, and members of the community who are joining us here today and those who are watching this meeting via live stream. Now let us begin by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will call the roll to recognize board members and establish that we have a quorum. Mr. Savarna.
Pernille Savarna, student member of the board.
Shebra Evans, good to see everyone, District 4.
Good afternoon, Rebecca Smondrowski, District 2.
Good afternoon, Lynn Harris. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an at-large member, and I do want to also acknowledge members of the boards of education and school systems in South and North Carolina and Florida. I haven't heard much about that aspect of the impact of the hurricanes, but I know public education is not happening in a lot of those places, and we're thinking about them.
Good afternoon, Brenda Wolf, District 5.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes, Grace Rivera Oven, District 1, and I ditto what my colleague Lynn Harris said about our families and friends in Florida.
Ms. Yang?
Good afternoon, Yang, District 3. I'm happy to join you via Zoom, and I also ditto board member Harris' comment.
And I'm Carla Silvestre, president of the board. Now we can begin the meeting with the approval of the revised agenda.
So moved.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Okay. Our next agenda item is item number 3. Can I get a motion to move the monthly report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. I now will pass it on to Dr. Taylor to present the death resolution.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I do have one resolution for the passing of a staff member. Whereas the death on May 26, 2024 of Mr. Vincent K. Shipp, a chemistry teacher at John F. Kennedy High School, has deeply saddened the staff, students, and members of the Board of Education. And whereas during his more than 9 months of service to Montgomery County Public Schools, Mr. Shipp demonstrated a thorough understanding of how his role contributed to student success, and whereas Mr. Shipp worked hard to cultivate respectful, positive, and productive relationships with students and their families, his efforts helped students feel safe, welcomed, and valued. He offered a wide range of instructional strategies to help his students master the skills and information he taught. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools express their sorrow at the death of Mr. Shipp and extend deepest sympathies to his family, and may it further be resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the family of Mr. Shipp.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Our next agenda item is 3.2, recommended appointments. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I have 2 recommended appointments for the board's consideration this afternoon. The first is Mrs. Jennifer R. Benson for the supervisor in the Department of Special Education Services in the Office of Special Education. Joining her today is her mother, Judy Zito Weber, and her sister, Lisa Zito. Mrs. Benson has been employed with MCPS for 21 years as a special education teacher, special education resource teacher, and most recently as an instructional specialist in the Office of the Resolution and Compliance Unit. She looks forward to returning to the Department of Special Education Services, providing support to staff, students, and families. Shout outs to her husband, Matthew Benson, sisters Andrea Zito and Diana Bailey, and her children and in-laws, Patty and Giles Benson, who are watching online.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Congratulations.
Madam President, members of the board, our second and final recommendation this afternoon is for Mrs. Marie C. Burkaw, Assistant Director, Department of Talent Acquisition in the Office of Human Resources and Development. Joining Ms. Burkaw today is her daughter Hannah, daughter-in-law Sheila, and her grandson Remy. Mrs. Burkaw has been employed with MCPS for 23 years as a secretary, certification specialist, and most recently as the certification coordinator in the Department of Talent Acquisition. Mrs. Burkaw looks forward to continuing her certification work with MCPS. Shout outs to her daughter, Carla, son-in-law Quincy, and son Christopher, who are watching online.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Congratulations. Okay, our next agenda items is recognitions. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you. We have one resolution recognizing National School Bus Safety Week. For the board's consideration today. Whereas the week of October 21st through the 25th, 2024 has been designated as National School Bus Safety Week, and whereas School Bus Safety Transportation is more than a ride to and from school, it is an access to education and to the future with filled options for our students. And whereas the school bus experience is considered to be a student's first classroom, a place where students form relationships with peers and staff, and whereas school buses are recognized widely as the safest form of ground transportation, and whereas each student riding a school bus should have a safe and secure environment that sets a positive tone for the day to foster a high level of learning success, and whereas staff in the Department of Transportation is committed to moving our future and will work collaboratively with our multi-agency partners to keep students safe as they travel to and from school. And whereas Montgomery County Public Schools Department of Transportation services more than 100,000 students daily on more than 1,200 bus routes, nearly 2,300 bus operators and attendants will travel 112,000 miles per day to safely transport our students to and from school to more than 230 school sites, field trips, athletic practices and events, and school-sponsored activities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education proclaims the week of October 21st through 25th, 2024 as National School Bus Safety Week.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. All right, moving on to our next agenda items, and that is public comments. Public comments is one of the opportunities to hear the views and receive the advice of community members. Board members will take your comments into consideration, but it is not our practice to take action at this time on issues that are raised. We encourage public input on policy, program, and practices. This is not the proper avenue to address specific or student matters, so we encourage everyone to utilize existing avenues of redress for complaints. This is a public meeting, and we expect the conduct of all speakers and members of the audience to be within the bounds of proper etiquette. Inappropriate personal remarks, rude retorts, or other such behavior is out of order and will not be tolerated. Those who demonstrate disruptive or disrespectful behavior during public comments may be asked to leave the room. Please check our website for information about upcoming board meetings, hearings, and work session, including any changes to our meeting start times. We have 10 people that have signed up to provide in-person testimony. Each speaker will receive 2 minutes for comments. When your name is called, please approach the table, speak clearly and directly into the microphone. 30 seconds prior to the expiration of a speaker's time, a yellow light will go on, accompanied by a beep. A red light and a buzzer signals that your time has expired. Please push the flat button below the microphone to turn it on and begin speaking. Push the button once more at the end, push the same button once more at the sound of the buzzer to turn it off. In addition to our in-person speakers today, we have 5 people signed up to provide audio and video testimonies. We will play these submissions once the in-person testimonies have concluded. Copies of testimonies can be found on our website on Board Docs, where they are posted with other materials for this meeting. Now let's have our first 6 speakers please come forward. Daisy Wong, Maggie Chang, David Stein, Samira Hussein, Victoria Hill, and Tim Warner. Daisy Wong, you may begin.
Good afternoon, board members. I am Daisy Wong, and I'm here with Maggie Chang because we care about the safety of our community and of the students in our county. Maggie and I are both debaters, and through our research, we have discovered the horrors of trafficking. Beyond the knowledge of what trafficking can do to individuals, it became abundantly clear that a significant portion of our community had acknowledged deficiency in trafficking. In fact, a recent 2023 poll reported that 46% of Americans have little to no knowledge on trafficking past a very basic definition. Personally, it was not until I was exposed to this research that I found out how prevalent this issue was and how many people, especially my age, that modern slavery affects. And upon further discussion with our peers, we realized that many high schoolers were uneducated on these issues. We commonly got questions like, what is trafficking? And many more didn't know the basics, like the warning signs of a victim and how trafficking happens. To us, this was extremely concerning, considering over half of domestic human trafficking cases involve teens, with thousands of these cases being from Maryland and Montgomery County. Therefore, we took our own action in our school community at Richard Montgomery High School to start a club that would educate our peers about the dangers of human trafficking. And outside of our club meetings, we host fundraisers to raise money and clothing drives to donate to women's shelters. With hundreds of dollars raised and more than 50 pounds of clothing donated, our outreach efforts have been successful. But we know that more can be done so that other high school students can also learn the same valuable lessons about trafficking. This is a pressing issue. Each person that learns about trafficking is another step in mitigating the human trafficking crisis, and not only will our students be able to save themselves from being a potential case, but also their community from being victims. Therefore, we are here to advocate for human trafficking to be a mandatory subject in the high school health curriculum, and even just one anti-trafficking lesson has the potential to save lives. Thank you, and I'll leave it up to Maggie to speak more about our plans.
Maggie Chang, you may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Maggie Chang, and I'm here with Daisy to advocate for the inclusion of a sex trafficking unit in the health curriculum. Anti-trafficking organizations and U.S. security agencies agree that children should learn about trafficking and abuse prevention starting at age 9, especially when a significant portion of trafficked individuals range from ages 12 to 17. Furthermore, D.C. has the second highest number of trafficking cases per 100,000 people out of any U.S. state or territory. We acknowledge the current efforts that Maryland and Montgomery County have ongoing, yet we urge our community to do more. While the Maryland Education Code Section 7-432 pledges to provide distribution of awareness and training materials, I have not witnessed this as a high school student as any required part of a lesson taught at school. The health curriculum provides the perfect place to spread awareness for such topics for a couple of reasons. First, trafficking directly impacts the health and well-being of our community. From being in the streets talking to survivors, we know that trafficking is a prevalent issue and concerns all aspects of health. Second, it falls under the Maryland Comprehensive Education Standards for K-12 framework. Of the 8 standards, trafficking addresses at least half of them. We recognize that the issues that trafficking raised can be a sensitive subject. Thus, such a curriculum will be modeled after sex ed units in a way that they will include opt-out forms. However, we encourage the trafficking curriculum to include material and assignments ensuring that students will understand essential questions such as, who should you tell if you see trafficking signs, what these trafficking signs are, and most importantly, how to prevent oneself and others from being victims. Together, Daisy and I will continue to spread anti-trafficking discourse, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss the issue and hopefully create meaningful change in our community.
Thank you. David Stein, you may begin.
Hello, Dr. Taylor, President Silvestri, and the Board of Education. As you know, MCEA has begun contract reopener negotiations with the board and is currently negotiating salary supplements, stipends, grievance procedures, and procedures for reductions in staff. These are serious contractual items that my members and I care deeply about, and thus far in the negotiations, we have appreciated the district's tone and tenor, which I see as the district's recognition of the importance of what we are discussing. Too frequently, negotiations between unions and employers can be trivialized or gamified, but when we reduce negotiations to a set of strategies and tactics, we can overlook the importance of the underlying motivating factors for why we're sitting at the table in the first place. MCPS continues to face educator vacancies and turnover. That means we don't have enough educators in place for our students to learn and succeed. Ensuring that MCPS continues to be a place where educators can afford to work by offering a strong compensation package is how we can recruit and retain educators and address these existing shortages. This is why salaries, stipends, and supplements truly matter. And like any workplace, there are going to be disagreements between staff and management. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're much larger. It's easy for outsiders to misunderstand and misinterpret what our grievance procedure is about, but we know that grievances are about creating a fairer process for both employees and the district and increasing faith in our system. These are clearly important issues that we are trying to address at the bargaining table. Our students and our educators desperately need us to come up with solutions that will improve our lives. Public education is too important for us to make mistakes. And while bargaining is not a game of chess, I think there are some important lessons that we can draw from the game of kings. Like competitive chess, we are keenly aware of our time constraints. Completing bargaining by November 1st will allow all of us to move forward in the budget process clearly and coherently. The MCEA team has presented their initial proposals, and so, as in chess, we push the button and we wait anxiously for the board's team to react with equal urgency and alacrity. Our kids can't wait, and neither can my members. Time isn't on either of our sides. It's your move.
Thank you. Samira Hussein, you may begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Samira Hussein. I'm a parent of 4 children who lived through all forms of bullying, hate violence, and hate crimes in schools, on the bus, and in the neighborhood. The school system, the police, the court system all failed us, doing nothing to protect my children and keep them safe. I would like to start by thanking the current MCPS administration for issuing statements regarding the ongoing concerns of the circumstances overseas and at home. One of the statements included the phrase, quote, the one-year anniversary, the October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas on Israel and the resultant conflict in Gaza. Well, the missing part of the statement should have said the one-year anniversary was the resistance to the 75 years occupation, oppression, imprisonment without a cause, destructions of home, schools, splitting families, starvation, and more homelessness. I lived through the entire thing. We need to be more vigilant to what is happening around the world. We need to teach and practice peace, not hatred and bias. We live in a scary, challenging times. How will we get out of this if we continue to blame and hate one another? Our public schools are paid by our tax dollars. All issues need to be equally addressed in the schools. What occurs inside the schools affects all the students and all their families. Let's not dismiss this or take it lightly. We need change, and it starts with every one of us here. And I'm glad to be part of that change. I sit in the anti-hate committee. I am here today feeling optimistic and hoping for a change. Let's focus on academics. Let the student learn and the teachers teach. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Victoria Hill, you may begin.
You may remember that I testified about our 136 elementary schools without 911 cellular calling capability, silent alarms, or landlines to call for help. I identified a free security assessment tool to help ascertain gaps, and you failed to use it. I found grant programs both through the federal government and private companies, and your grants team said it was too much work. I discovered that you found an additional $2 million for school security, but applied none of it to the elementary schools, despite knowing the vulnerabilities. I proposed a parent-led fundraiser and was told that we are not permitted to use any funds we raise for emergency call buttons in our elementary school because it would make ours safer than other schools and therefore unequal. But it's actually you who are promoting inequality. You are outwardly preventing any attempt made by parents, security officials, or elementary schools to increase their safety or protect themselves. You have left security solely in the hands of principals, which makes safety a subjective or even political tool, when the reality is that every elementary school student and teacher, regardless of race, religion, or political party, deserves to feel safe in school. Everyone I've spoken to agrees that you will not act until there is a massacre. Even if it means this county will never recover and dozens of children die, even if you have to tear down an elementary school, relocate hundreds of students, provide mental health services to survivors, deal with negligence lawsuits, years of investigations, and after action reports, and spend upwards of $100 million or more on forced security measures. You would rather do all of that than spend a fraction of that now to prevent it from ever happening. That leads me to ask, what is your agenda here? My 3 children are the reason I'm sitting here today and will continue, knowing that my words will fall on deaf ears. So if the worst happens, I can tell them I did every single thing I could. Can you say the same? As the months go by, I think we know the answer to that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Tim Warner, you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Tim Warner. I serve as senior pastor of Emory Grove United Methodist Church in Gaithersburg. Also served for a number of years as MCPS's Chief Engagement and Partnership Officer, and before that, as Montgomery County Executive's Liaison for the African American and faith communities. The town of Emory Grove is a community in Gaithersburg. It has historically been a hub of sorts for many of the foundational slave-descending African American neighborhoods in Montgomery County. It was founded in 1874 by freed slaves who created a tightly knit, very functional, although poor community. It was a major player in the Mid-Atlantic region in the Great Methodist Camp Meeting movement, hosting nearly a century, for nearly a century, the largest African-American camp meeting in the region. Negro League Baseball was played on the first lit baseball field there, and all the major performers on what was then called the Chitlin Circuit performed at Emory Grove's entertainment venue called the Dewdrop Inn. The then Longview School for Colored Children, which is still seen as an asset in the community, was also built in the 1950s to educate black children in the region, is also located in Emory Grove. While the former Longview School was currently used as a holding school, currently serving up the Upcounty Early Childhood Learning Center, the Heritage Emory Grove CDC would love to partner with MCPS to reestablish it as much more of a community asset, inviting MCPS to become a part of this broad coalition of partners to help enhance the educational outcomes of Emory Grove students as it leads in the redevelopment of the community with 450 units of housing. We have plans to help repair a long and troubled racial history that could include a bike path through Emory Grove that will connect with Washington Grove. We would also like to see many unsightly abandoned mobile classrooms left over from the South Lake Elementary School transition more than a year ago removed, as they're a safety hazard and a blight, yet another symbol of community disrespect in that community. And we believe these mobile units are also leased and are hence perhaps a wasted asset. We applaud the presence of the work of the Early Childhood Learning Center. Well, you got the rest in testimony. We would like for you to consider these proposals and have conversation with us.
Thank you. Thank you, and now we'll ask our next set of speakers to please come to the podium. Michael Johnson, Evelyn Chung, Mickey Chandra, and Courtney Evans. Michael Johnson, you may begin. Just hit the mic. There's a button at the base there. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm a co-founder of Historic Emory Grove Rotary Club. We're engaged in philanthropic, to preserve the history of Emory Grove, and I've lived in Emory Grove for most of my life, and I've actually taught school there. And I've been a teacher with Montgomery County for about 40 years. More than 50 years ago, this community was raised and took apart due to urban renewal, and which most of us, a lot of us call Negro removal. was founded. This happened to a lot of communities after in the late 19th century, who were founded by former slaves. I hope you can imagine the excitement of Emery Grove United Methodist Church, which is probably the only building still left in Emery Grove. And we're happy to partner with the Heritage Emery Grove Community Development Association. We, the Rotary Club, have been pleased with the CDC's work, and particularly to restore the dignity, history, and which brings new residents a new sense of belonging in that community. Some of that work has been done by former Longview Elementary School children, where I was a student. Well, we recognize the importance of building new schools. We have kind of been plagued by so many of the temporary sites, as Reverend Warner talked about, from former Westlake School. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Reverend Warner has talked about those things that we like to do. So we hope that Montgomery County Public School will help in this endeavor to create a great opportunity, and we be a part of representation for Longview Elementary School.
Thank you. Evelyn Chung, you may begin.
Members of the Board of Education and Superintendent Taylor, my name is Evelyn Chung, and I'm testifying as the Vice President of Education for the Montgomery County Council of PTAs. Today, as you consider literacy performance among emergent multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and students receiving farms, we offer the following considerations. First, we urge MCPS to publish an action plan and deliverables from MCPS's independent review of emergent multilingual learners by the Center for Applied Linguistics, also known as the CAL report. Without a clear action plan, accountability and transparency are lacking. The report includes important insights and recommendations on issues such as professional development for literacy and all content teachers, not just ELD teachers, support for newcomers and METS programs, increased ELD staffing and coordinators, engagement and language accessibility for multilingual families, guidance for evaluating and serving EMLs with disabilities, and support for our two-way immersion programs. Second, externally vetted, not homegrown, high-quality instructional materials in literacy are essential at all grade levels. A strong curriculum should include explicit scaffolds for emergent multilingual learners and special ed, and facilitate collaboration with ELD and special education specialists. We need this not only in elementary, but also middle school and high school. Third, MCPS should roll out an early warning system and provides individual reading plans for the nearly half of our students who are not meeting state literacy thresholds, following the recommendations of the Black and Brown Coalition, the state's proposed literacy policy, COMA regulations. Fourth, all elementary schools should establish structured differentiated literacy time, what is often called WIN time. And finally, we need to provide our teachers and reading specialists with the time, class coverage, and manageable class size that they need to implement the best pedagogical practices supported by our principals and this year's operating budget. Finally, I ask you to take a look at the letter that we sent to the Maryland State Department of Education regarding the proposed third grade retention policy, which could have grave costs and long-term impacts on our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Miki Chandra, you may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the board and Superintendent Taylor. My name is Miki Chandra, and I'm the chair of the MCC-PTA Technology Committee. Today and throughout the year, you will review technology contracts involving student data. Unfortunately, MCPS's contract template is outdated and lacks essential protections. It does not explicitly prevent ed tech vendors from using children's personal information for product development or AI training, nor does it require regular deletion of student data. The 2022 data breach at Illuminate Education is a stark reminder of the risks. They retained data for over 10 years and had trouble locating affected students to notify them a breach occurred. We urge you to scrutinize these contracts with a focus on data and data security and privacy. Our committee has requested improved safeguards and oversight of ed tech vendors, but the outdated template remains in use. Parents and guardians also face difficulties accessing vendor contracts used in schools, often without their consent, as FERPA allows schools to consent on their behalf. The board has previously supported MCCPTA's request for transparency in multi-year technology contracts. Unlike districts in Colorado, which make all contracts publicly available, MCPS does not post all technology contracts online, like the new Lightspeed contract. These contracts should be posted on the procurement website. We also recommend accessible privacy training for non-IT staff and regular data cleanup on data deletion day. So the big ask. We urge the board to support these requests and consider forming a stakeholder advisory group to regularly address these technology issues. Thank you for your commitment to protecting our children's data and privacy. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Courtney Evans, you may begin.
Good afternoon. In 2021, MCPS did something truly remarkable, and I'm here to give credit where it's due. Here's the pop quiz. What do penicillin, Velcro, microwave ovens, and the virtual academy all have in common? The answer is they were all unexpected, unintended, profound successes that changed lives. Although it was implemented under duress, MSDE's BVP model was not new. The 2021 application was built on years of experience, expertise, and consideration. It methodically asked local systems to explain how they would implement a BVP to comply with specific virtual school regulations outlined in COMAR, and admin worked with local systems to ensure programs would be high quality and sustainable. MCPS deserves accolades for its visionary leadership in implementing a version of the BVP model that was virtually identical to in-person learning. Kids accessed their teachers and classmates virtually, but they were not staring at a screen all day. They were reading books, writing on paper, and using physical learning manipulatives for math and science. They collaborated and interacted with peers, exercised, and learned to play instruments. They maintained access to services and extracurriculars offered by their geographically assigned schools. You must understand that MVA, as MCPS's implementation of the BVP model, was unique. There's no other private or third-party public model that holds a candle to the quality of this program. And that quality was reflected in the student, parent, staff surveys, performance, and success stories. Perhaps most importantly, hundreds of kids who previously had no hope of a normal education experience finally had it all. I cannot possibly overstate to you the profound impact that has on a child's education and existence, or on a parent's heart. Please take time to really digest that. This program changed lives in ways that no other existing virtual program has or could. And MCPS did that. You did that. You created something that made good on the promises of your strategic plan, and it truly worked. How could we let it go? I encourage you to embrace your success in setting a powerful precedent for what equitable, modern education can look like in Maryland. Please reinstate MVA in the FY26 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. We received 1 audio and 4 video testimonies. The first submission comes from Yolanda Belton. Please play the audio.
Hello, everyone. The closure of the MVA is still affecting our students. The new BLP program in no way compares to the MVA. The MVA provided a complete education during regular school hours, unlike this new program. This program also does not fulfill the needs of many students, and I fear many will not even fit the criteria for being accepted into this program. We need a better solution for these students. The more time that goes by without an adequate solution to the abrupt closure of the MVA means the more these MCPS students suffer, the more education they miss out on, and the more they can start to fall behind, not just academically, but socially and emotionally as well. As a parent, it's disheartening to see my children still so devastated by the closure of the MVA, and there are so many that feel just as devastated as my family does. My oldest daughter, who was on track to graduate from high school in the MVA with a close to perfect GPA, is already struggling in just the second month of school, and she is not alone in her struggles. Unfortunately, many former MVA students are in the same boat. No one wants to see their child's spirit diminish. We want our children to grow. We want them to flourish, just like they did in the MVA. We must come up with a solution fast. Time is definitely of the essence. We are here, and we will continue to fight for our children till they get what they deserve. Thank you.
Our next video testimony comes from Lisa Klein. Please play the video.
Hi, Lisa Klein from Gaithersburg, and I'm here today to talk about social media and how by promoting it, you're inadvertently harming our kids. Social media is toxic, this we know. It's deliberately addictive and feeds fatal challenges and destructive algorithms to its users. It's insidiously designed to spike dopamine and persuade users to want more and more and more. It actually amplifies hate speech on purpose. And this is why we advocates have urged the Surgeon General to call for warning labels and for lawmakers to pass the Kids Online Safety Act. And attorney generals in 38 states have now sued social media for predatory practices. And I know you know how bad it is because MCPS joined a lawsuit with over 200 other school districts holding social media accountable for making kids unavailable to learn. And of course, this year, leaders like Stephanie Sharon blocked social media from the MCPS network. However, and this is why I'm here today, MCPS teachers continue to make TikToks for kids, assign projects to create fake Instagram accounts, principals are asking kids to follow them on X, and coaches are mandating WhatsApp. And then there's all the QR codes lining the hallways on posters and flyers. These are all pipelines to doom scrolling and putting screens between all of us. So while the data declares that we have a learning crisis, I somewhat disagree. We have a dopamine crisis, and MCPS is enabling the crisis by steering kids to social media. I get it. We've all fallen for the trap of giving into the pressure of kids. It's just time to undo it. Be a school, not a friend. Don't try to be relevant or meet kids where they are, because I don't have to tell you that many kids are not in a great place. So please stop the practice of student-facing social media. I know it will greatly improve the culture of our schools and help so many families. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next video testimony comes from Sterling High. Please play the video.
Good afternoon. Today I want to talk about a choice that we've made, a choice that has cost us far more than we anticipated and pushed hundreds of students out of MCPS entirely. When the Montgomery Virtual Academy was closed, it was presented as a cost-saving measure, but the numbers tell a different story. Out of the 1,100 students who applied for the MVA in the 24-25 school year, 295 left MCPS entirely when the academy was eliminated. And with them, we will lose over $5.8 million in per pupil funding, more than the $5 million that the line item was removed from the budget. And that's just the direct funding for these students being lost. It doesn't even account for the increased cost to educate former MVA students, especially IEP students, in brick and mortar schools. The closure of the MVA has done the opposite of its stated goal and has added costs to the system, not reduced it. This isn't just about dollars, though. It's about students and families who trusted MCPS to provide a flexible, high-quality learning environment. When that option disappeared, so did they. This loss is especially painful given our current enrollment crisis. A comprehensive virtual school would alleviate overcrowded classrooms while retaining students who thrive in a virtual setting. But even more important, having a virtual school is essential to ensure that every student, no matter their situation, has access to high-quality instruction and resources. This aligns with one of the core principles of the board, equitable access to education for all students. The decision to close the MVA has had unintended negative consequences for both students and the system. Restoring a comprehensive virtual school isn't just fiscally responsible, it's a strategic imperative. It's how we ensure that no student is left behind and that MCPS remains a leader in educational access and innovation. Bring back a comprehensive virtual school that meets the needs of all of our students and strengthens our school system. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next video testimony comes from Carmon Saxena. Please play the video.
Hi, my name is Carmon Saxena, and I'm here today to talk about graduation requirements, more specifically the tech credit in MCPS. Now, a revision to the graduation requirements is MCPS's #1 goal, and that is amazing to hear. However, the current situation is quite bad. In my Foundations of Computer Science class that I took last year, people were only in the class to get the tech credit, and that was their only reason for being there. In my AP Computer Science Principles class that I'm taking this year, the exact same thing is happening, where people only want the credit. Now, even in these classes, the curriculum is quite basic. With it, we don't have the programs to actually understand what is happening, or ways to apply our knowledge into applications or websites, things like that. In this situation is similar to almost all of my friends across the county. They don't have a good comm sci department. It's as simple as that. If MCPS wants to continue innovation in technology and have students understand what is happening, there's really only two options. Option number one is to make the course non-required and specifically specialize it into what people want in a comm sci department if they want to pursue careers in cybersecurity, for example. Option number two is to make the course still required, but have it be challenging enough and it more modern enough that people understand what is happening and then can apply it in many different ways. But whatever the option is, action needs to be taken. Comm sci is part of almost all of our lives now, whether we like it or not. That's something that you've probably heard before, and that still holds true. We need technology education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our last video testimony comes from Rika Tipathi. Please play the video.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Education. My name is Richa Tripathi, and I'm a junior at Kennedy High School. I would like to start by acknowledging the work the board has done thus far for LGBTQ+ students. Thank you for continuing to fight for us, even when it got hard to do so. But you can do more by giving us the gender-neutral facilities we need and deserve. Gender nonconforming students face discrimination, bullying, and a lack of privacy in traditional gender-separated facilities. The influence of drugs, violence, and hate crimes in bathrooms is not a new development, but the disproportionate effect on queer students is slowly increasing as LGBTQ+ rights disappear across the United States. Gender-neutral bathrooms, or all-gender bathrooms, are an alternative solution to the gender-segregated bathrooms that we're used to. They're an inclusive space that can be used by a student of any gender identity. These bathrooms promote gender equality, especially for trans people who may not feel comfortable in either bathroom. These facilities provide several other non-LGBTQ+ inclusivity-related benefits, such as shorter queues, easier physical accessibility, and more privacy than a typical restroom. Countless gender-neutral bathroom models have been shown to work effectively, such as the famous St. Paul model, which allows security to better monitor bathrooms for bullying and drug use. The restroom area has an open design, which is easy to see through. Restrooms are located in busy areas, and each stall has a clear door lock showing whether a stall is vacant or not. A potential short-term solution to this issue, which my graduated fellow activist Jax Kobe once brought to you, would be simply changing the bathroom signs to remove gender terminology. It doesn't have to be costly if you do it right, and it could be a valuable first step to gender neutrality. Think about that when the construction is underway at schools across the county. Think about that when you're considering allocating money from the budget. We definitely deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. This will conclude our public comments. The next business meeting of the Board of Education for public comment is Tuesday, October 22nd. Sign-ups for public comment will open on Tuesday, October 15th at 6 p.m. In addition to online sign-ups for public comment, we allow for in-person, same-day sign-ups when space allows. Unallocated slots may be filled on a first-come, first-served basis on the day of the meeting. In order to sign up in person, please arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes before the start of the open session and sign the form. In-person signups will close 15 minutes before public comment begins or when all slots are filled. I will now turn to my fellow board members to see if they have any comments or questions before we proceed with the agenda. Ms. Yang.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for coming in for your testimony. And I want to ask the staff, can you please follow up with Reverend Warner and Mr. Johnson on the trailers? Do we have trailers that's not used but left out from before? I will appreciate that. And also, I want to do advertisement. I think our student Sasina had pointed out area of staffing shortage is our Department of Computer Science. And for any people consider a career change, mid-career change out there, I know Montgomery College have a fast-track teacher certificate certification program in the technology area. We would love to have you and strengthen our technology education. Thank you, everyone, for coming in.
Ms. Wolf.
I want to thank everyone that came to speak today, but I was especially interested in Daisy and Maggie's information about adding human trafficking to our health committee, our health curriculum. I don't know if we can do that because I don't know if the content is mandated by the state, but I do think it's an intriguing idea, and I do know with the use of social media, it is something that we should be talking to our students about also. So I would like to have that looked into. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rivera Oven?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. To echo my colleagues' comments, I just want to say to Daisy and Maggie, your testimony really moved me because as someone who formerly has worked with victims of human trafficking and domestic violence who were actually very young, the news is not very positive. The fact is that a lot of these rings do target young girls as early as in middle school. They do target a large portion of our immigrant community, knowing very well that the parents really don't know a lot of the laws or don't know where to go for help. And unfortunately, the DMV area, it is one of the largest areas where human trafficking happens. And Montgomery County is one of those stops. So I would really encourage our staff to look into it because guess what? You don't know what you don't know. And information is powerful. And we need to ensure that our young people and the parents know that information. So kudos to you for taking it on your own. I applaud you. I really do. I applaud you because it's not an easy thing to do. So thank you so much on behalf of all of us, because it really takes young people like yourselves, not just to, complain about something, but you actually, guess what, you did something about it. So thank you. The other thing I wanted to say is to Mrs. Chung's testimony about providing all that information and our plan of work with reading. And I think we're going to do that, correct? So her testimony was, very along the lines of what we're going to discuss today in the presentation. And just like her, we also are looking forward to what the plans are going to be and to be concrete and clear with timelines and all that. So thank you for that. To Reverend Warner and the Emory Grove community, they're a wonderful community. The Emory Grove Church, when I was growing up in Towncrest, was a safe haven for me. So anything that we can do to make sure that we are supportive of that and that we're not being a burden. But, there is wonderful things we can do with tutoring, with stuff after school, and I'm sure it will be welcome with open arms. And just to the last two students that testify, technology is with us. So we really need to make it interesting for our young people. It should not just be, let me just take this class just to get out of the way. It should be somewhere that, we challenge, we have the best technology and so on. And going to that with the mom, I think she's here, who's in the Committee of Technology, that concerned me a little bit because privacy of our young people foremost should be really important, and we should have the safeguards to ensure that we're not retaining personal information that can be tampered with and so on. But I think we do have a good IT team, and I know we have a superintendent who's on top of it. I just wanted to let you know. And then to Richard from John F. Kennedy High School, like her, there's many young people in our county, who have the same sentiment. And guess what? We want every young people to feel safe and welcome and not to feel siloed and not to feel like they don't belong. So I know that we're going to be looking into that as well. To all of you who testify, thank you for taking the time of your day to be able to give us feedback. And I want you to know that we do take your feedback into account.
Mr. Savana.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say a very big shout out to all the students who testified today. Daisy and Maggie, thank you guys for talking about your research and the things that you've come across and trying to elevate that to the board level. And I'm interested in seeing what the possibilities are with the health curriculum and other aspects. I know there was another student who had come previously to the board also talking about maybe some things to be included into the health curriculum now that it's a full year. So these are, I think, ongoing process of some things that maybe we could potentially look into. And then also, kind of circling back to that idea of like graduation requirements too, which is I think something that as a board we're really sort of taking I guess more of a stance on in terms of our legislative platform, which talks about maybe kind of dropping down some of those graduation requirements on a statewide level, so we can really look at what do we need to give our students to succeed. And so again, just a really big shout out to the students who testified today and gave public comment, because that's what keeps the work moving forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans.
Sure. So my colleagues have really said a lot of what I wanted to say. Ms. Rivera-Oven, in terms of acknowledging our students, and Mrs. Suvarna, and I was going to also direct our students to look at our legislative platform that we are having MSDE, look up our graduation requirements to just reassess it and do an audit of that. That way we can do some other things. And then Mr. Warner, Mr. Johnson, I was going to ask if Elba Garcia could reach out to them so that they could have a conversation. And Ms. Yang also brought up the question of the relocatables that are on site, and if they don't need to be there, we do want to remove them. So that could be a great partnership, and it was good to see Mr. Warner. I haven't seen him in quite some time. But I also wanted to acknowledge Mr. Stein. I appreciate him coming to the table to talk about the good interactions that he's having with our superintendent regarding contract negotiations. And of course, the board will be apprised and get back to you as well. But I just wanted to acknowledge the collaborative partnership that is happening, as well as the willingness to interact and engage with all of us. So thank you for that.
Ms. Harris.
Yes, echoing everything my colleagues have said, and Ms. Wong and Ms. Chang, I do want to make sure that you're connected with Jody Finkelstein, who has been leading the county's anti-trafficking work for a long time. And if you're not, Christy Scott will get your emails, and I will, sitting in the back of the room, will get your emails, and I will make sure you're connected to her, because I know she would like to work with you and make sure that we close that loop so she's aware of the powerful things that you guys are doing that is so supportive of the work that she has been doing in the county for a while. And I did appreciate Ms. Chung and Ms. Chandra's testimony. I always, perhaps it's my bias, but every time MCC-PTA comes to the table, they're thoughtful, they're constructive, they have good ideas. So I would like to suggest that we take Ms. Chandra's suggestion for a community technology stakeholder advisory group, because every area of work where we're partnering with MCC-PTA is making the school system better and is creating stronger connections with the community, whether it's the skits around construction work, whether it, all of it, the hate bias work, it's making us better. So I would really, it's a good pragmatic idea, and I hope we can think about taking it up. And then I did also, in line with Mr. Pathi's testimony, I did want to express my personal gratitude about the inclusive restroom design that St. Paul's Public Schools has been embracing and including in all of its construction and renovation projects for 10 years now is something that I feel very passionately about and have been advocating around for about 6 years now. And I very much appreciate seeing the way MCPS is embracing that design. And I was at Wooten High School over the weekend and saw the renovation that was done over the summer, and it is textbook. It looks like a picture that could have been taken out of a St. Paul's public school. And I so appreciate the way that we see value in that work. It's respecting everybody. It's anti-bullying. It's safety. And I think that's just a great direction. And I personally really appreciate the way that we are doing that work.
Mrs. Madrowski.
Yeah, an effort not to be repetitive, I will just associate myself with all of the comments made by my colleagues. I think everything has really been covered quite well, and just say thank you for your testimony and bringing us your perspective on things, because that's how we best do our job. So thank you.
Regarding Reverend Warner's testimony about Emory Grove, in addition to what my colleagues have already said, I did meet with him about this topic, and it is multifaceted. They do want the use of the school, and I know it has been a barrier because it is a holding school, and we don't have a lot of options. We haven't had a lot of options in terms of not keeping that as a holding school. But if Mr. Mamoon could reach out to him to kind of understand the facilities perspective, what kind of their vision is for that facility, I think that would be helpful, and kind of bring him up to date on where we are with the holding school and future plans for that facility. Dr. Taylor, I did want you to address the testimony about safety, especially in elementary schools. I think it was Ms. Hill that brought that up.
Absolutely, and thank you for that opportunity. And I just want to echo how fantastic the public speakers were today in terms of bringing really pragmatic solutions and great recommendations to make the school system better, and what a productive upgrade in tone that we've really heard from our speakers, and just the positive contribution is just so welcome, and we love the great suggestions. They've been really pragmatic and really right on point. Along the same lines, safety remains the board's top priority. It is one of your focus points for this year, as it is every year, but clearly this year and some of the needs. It may be hard for the community to sometimes recognize that we may have redundant opportunities that we have to explore. And just because we say no to one opportunity or one grant doesn't mean we're not covering that same exercise another way and through another mechanism. We look forward to bringing our next quarterly update to the board and showcasing some of the positive changes that we've made to make our schools safe, especially our elementary schools. And I think that the community will be pleased with our progress, and know that we are keeping our student safety in the forefront, and that we are very attentive to the issues brought forward by Ms. Hill and by others that share that concern.
Thank you. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 6, consent items, and I will ask my fellow board members if there's anything they would like to pull. Mr. Suvarna.
Yes, I would like to pull 6.1, and specifically just some of the food contracts associated with those.
Thank you. Mrs. Mandrowski?
6.4 and 6.1.
Okay. Can I get a motion to move the rest in block?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Okay, let's begin with 6.1. I think if we could get someone to come forward to talk about the food contracts. Which one in particular were you interested in?
There's a couple. So it's stemming from, I believe.
What is your question, I guess?
Okay, I can pull up the number. It's related to the cookie dough.
Yeah, but what is your question about the contract?
Oh, it's just asking for some further clarification. So my question basically stems from what does this new contract mean for students and the food that they see within their schools in terms of, in relation to the cookies, right? Because that's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Are we to understand that you have quality concerns about our cookie content? Let's just want to be abundantly clear that you're making sure that our students have high quality cookies.
Absolutely.
At all times.
All right,
just making sure.
It's a pinnacle and a pillar of our education to have our cookies in school. So I just wanted to talk about it for a second. So I believe it's 9220.1. Is one of them, and they're kind of all over the place.
They are.
Yeah.
No worries. So yes, we do have quality cookies. This is an a la carte item, and it's a continuation of what we have. So I believe it's a bridge item to make sure that we can continue to provide the cookies within schools. It is not with the lunch. It is what children purchase there. So we're not getting rid of cookies.
Got it. Yeah, and the reason I asked this question is because I know for a lot of students across the county, they've actually and I'll say this very frankly, a lot of them have emailed me or sent me a message on Instagram or contacted me in one way or another over the cookies, saying that they no longer have cookies in their school, and just maybe some clarification on what this contract would mean for the future.
And one thing I do want to clarify, our former vendor who provided our cookie dough went out of business. So that might be a reality of why some children did not have cookies during lunch. We are committed to it. Hence, you have this bridge contract with Baltimore County for us to provide the a la carte items. So, and if that ever happens, just reach out. You know, you've worked with our team just so that we can clarify, so we can provide some on-the-spot information for everyone.
All right, perfect. So just to clarify for maybe the couple students who are watching, and then the more we'll see on my Instagram page later, the cookies that maybe you haven't been seeing in your schools will be, coming back in one form or another. This is a new contract, a bridge contract from Baltimore that would basically take a new cookie dough manufacturer and put it into our school, so you would see cookies back in your lunchroom.
That is correct. Yes. Let's celebrate.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Mrs. Mandrowski?
Yes. So my first question in 6.1 is 4274.1 on page 4. Lawson Consulting and Maintenance contract. I just don't understand what that is. And even in our descriptive papers, I couldn't understand. We are paying a consulting company to, I just don't understand. It looks like we're paying a company to work for a company that's not MCPS, if I'm reading it right.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your question. M4 Lawson is currently our HRIS. They're the vendor. And so what ended up happening, there was an audit, and it was a random audit. So the initial contract was around $24,000. When we ran the numbers, we were actually at $32,000. So this is a reflection of the audit as it relates to the licensing of per person using the employee self-service that we have.
So HRIS is our Human Resources Information System. So it's like our employee data. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't understand that answer, so could you rephrase it? Or?
I don't. Not only do not understand the answer, but you just said it's 30,000, but the contract's for 88,000
employees. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase for everyone. M4 is our current vendor that is our HRIS record keeping system, and what happens when we use Lawson? There is a per person license that we have. That per person license initially in the contract was for around 24,000 employees. Upon running the data, we're actually at 32,000 employees. So it was an audit that had occurred, so that's the difference. So the cost is what is reflective of that increase.
Okay.
So you may want to explain what Lawson does.
Yeah, because like I said, it still feels like we're paying a company to pay a company.
Lawson is our HRIS, Human Resource Information Systems. This is the system that is being replaced with our Human Capital Management System. And so this is our payroll, compensation, our benefits, things such as that.
So it's just for additional licenses?
Yes, because initially when the contract was signed several years ago, it was for 24,000 employees for the licensing, and now we're at 32,000. That is including your active employees, part-time employees, things such as that.
Yeah, because our full-time employee load is closer to 24,000, but our total employee load is much, much higher than that.
Yes.
So it's over 30,000.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, and I'm sure it'll only be a couple more years before the system's actually up and running. Well, so.
Is there another one, 6.4?
Yes. 4912.1, fitness for duty. I really just have one quick question, and is this an ongoing report, or is it a one-time, are we paying them to continually report to us, or is this they're doing a report and we'll have one report?
Go ahead, take a seat, take your time.
Fitness for Duty is for our current folks who work in the schools, and it's to make sure that they're fit and able to do the job. So it is an ongoing contract.
Okay. So they're just going to be continually assessing people.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And then my last question is 6.4, the contract approval for fresh produce, the extension. I was really just curious why there's only one vendor. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations over the years about trying to really, reach out to our local farmers and things like that. And even if we had to break it up into a bunch of different farms or whatever, and I was just curious why there's only one that we're picking. And are they going to do our entire almost $3 million worth of produce?
Thanks for that conversation, that question. So this is the second year of this RFP with 3 possible extensions for this particular company. This produce is directly from Keeney, who's the vendor. We selected this vendor last year. We went through a really extensive process, visiting their production facility, testing their foods, being able to rate it. And one of the key things is that with them, we do get locally sourced food, which has been an initiative for us from 6 different local farms. So they're able to do that. That limits us from being able, from going out and doing that. That was one of the main reasons that we did select them, because they do work with local farms to be able to bring the food in. And so that does include in Montgomery County, the Moon Valley Farm in Frederick. It is one for us to be able to do that, delivering to the schools, remembering that those items, they cannot sit for long periods of time and being consumable. So we have expanded our footprint there, and we selected this company because they were able to help us do that.
Okay,
so this is our second year. This is an extension, and we have an opportunity to continue to do more extensions.
I appreciate that. I know we have a lot of farms that struggle and could definitely afford to have our support. So thank you.
Okay. So can I get a motion to move 6.1 and 6.4 in block?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. Mr. Rivera-Alvin? I'm sorry. That's unanimous. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, which is our literacy performance and strategies for emergent multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and free and reduced price meal systems. Again, our approach this year is not to have one big data presentation that covers all of our groups, but to focus specifically on different segments of that data at different board meetings. And rather than just looking at data, the focus of today's presentation should be, what are we doing about the data? What course are we taking to see improvements in the achievement of the populations that we're going to talk about again? So looking forward to hearing about what we're doing to improve performance based on the data that we already know, but we want to hear more about what we're doing about it. So Dr. Taylor.
And thank you, President Silvestri. That was my opening remarks. You nailed it. At this time, I want to welcome our team from Central Services and also Weller Road Elementary School to take that deep dive and to show what some of our action steps are going to look like and how we might meet the diverse needs of our learners. Take it away, Dr. Pugh.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, President Silvestri, Dr. Taylor, members of the board. We're back again in a series of presentations, as you shared, to go deeper. And speaking specifically to the next slide, we are focusing on the immediate actions that we are taking to address our need to serve our students who receive services, both through special education and English language services. And if we use our new curriculum and the supports that are within it, if we continue our co-teaching, supported planning, language development, and related professional learning, which you'll hear more about today, then we will impact our students' outcomes on literacy positively. Another feature is about targeted intervention and data-driven decision-making that actually happens right in the classroom at the moment when teachers have the information, but then also as a district when we respond to what we see in trends in the schools. Our literacy curricula is new, and our teachers are working hard to implement. It is a great curriculum. It is well aligned to the standards, and it has lots of features that will take some getting used to as we implement. And while all students have the physical materials that they need to fully engage with this curriculum, we do need to acknowledge that we do not currently have printed materials for all staff members. All classroom teachers for reading in grades pre-K through 5, including Learning Center staff, do have the printed teacher guides. However, our budget decisions around other staff members who may be assisting in the classroom, what we've provided for them is actually digital access to the content. Next slide, please. So reminder that the board's priority, number 1, was literacy and math, and today we're focusing on literacy. And I just wanted to show the reminder that it's aligned to the Maryland Strategic Plan, to MCPS Strategic Plan, and there are multiple measures that we have shared in the past and that we're coming back to today to deeper dig into our special populations. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, we also shared the 5 pillars that you see here about ensuring that we have strong foundational skills in early learners, ensuring that we have an excellent curriculum and access to that, access to diverse and inclusive grade level texts, as well as our strategy for secondary schools to make sure the students are practicing literacy skills across all contents, and that the 5th pillar is that we are actually doing that ongoing data analysis. This year we focused on one priority area, and we came to you and shared those priority areas: the curriculum at the elementary, the secondary approach to doing literacy across content areas, and then our continued support for teachers and leaders through our aligned professional learning. I'll now turn it over to Tamara Hewlett, Director of our Department of English Learners and Multilingual Education.
Good afternoon. Next slide, please. These are the performance data of our emerging multilingual learners as they performed on the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program in grades 3, 6, and 10. I want to draw your attention to the left column in the blue, where you see the overall data of all students by each grade level. I do want to call our attention to the last 2 columns, where we will focus on the recently exited emergent multilingual learner data. That's data we don't often get to see. We do know that our emergent multilingual learners currently are adding English to their linguistic repertoire, and that takes some time and it takes some efforts, and we will continue to implement what we need to make sure they learn and grow. But it's very important to see how our students, once they exit program, how they are doing. And so we can see for 3rd grade overall, in 22-23, 96.1% of our test takers who exited the program met the proficiency measure of the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program. In 23-24, 94.5%. And 6th grade, we have 45.5%, and in 10th grade this year, this past school year, we had 58.9%. I do want to ensure that everyone understands that in order to exit the language development program, you have to score a 4.5 or higher on the WIDA Access for ELS assessment. That's another assessment not displayed here, but that is what in the state of Maryland allows you to exit the program. Just because you have a 4.5 English language proficiency level or higher, it does not mean you have a full command of English. Really, the scale is 6.0. So it is very important, and by law, we have to monitor our recently exited students within the first 2 years of their exiting program, because they are also still growing in their language. And as we can see, once there's enough command of language, our students are keeping pace with the overall performance. Next slide, please.
One question.
I just have could you go back to that slide you were on? I just want you to help me understand. Grade 3 is overall. So for 2023, 2024, you said 21.9% are proficient, but those that recently exited, it's 94.5. Isn't that 94.5 in that 21.9?
They are not.
But can you explain that to me? Because you said overall, so.
So our in grade 3 overall, when the literacy team came to present a few weeks ago, they presented how overall all students did on the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment. So our emergent multilingual learners, our students receiving special education services, they're all included in that 54.9% if we take the third grade row. So they're all included in there. Today, the data is disaggregated and teased out so that you're seeing students who are currently in the ELD program, English Language Development Program, and how they performed. So in 23-24, this past school year, our students in third grade who are receiving English Language Development Services, 21.9% of test takers met the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment requirements. That's scoring a 3 or 4 on that assessment. 21.9% of the students in third grade met. But it's important that we also look at the ones who just exited program within 2 years. So the students in the 23-24 column, we are looking at students who exited either 1 or 2 years prior to that. That was a total of 398 test takers who exited, who were third graders, and 94.5% of those test takers met the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program measures.
I have no idea what you said. I mean,
So
I do and I don't.
the overall third grade is 54% are passing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
For everybody.
Of the emergent multilingual, 21.9%. And then of the overall, they pulled the recently exited ESOL students, and they're doing very well in third grade. They're a little bit below the overall in sixth grade and a little bit below the overall in 10th grade.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
I'll have to think on that a minute.
Could I jump in? Because it seems like if you think about it in terms of the number of test takers versus the percent, it might help you. So if you look at 3,342 took the test, and out of that, is that
So 3,342 third graders last school year were receiving English Language Development Services, and 21.9% of them met the measures for MCAP.
Right.
Dr. Addison?
I got that part.
Good
What's your question?
afternoon.
Hold on, let's
Sorry.
Did you have a follow-up?
No, I don't have a follow-up. I'm still thinking on it, but I did get that statistic you just gave. So.
Okay, I just wanted to just support with the clarity around the overall. I think just the language of overall is what's causing the confusion.
I think that's what's causing
It's all grade 3 students. So if we can think about it, of all grade 3, 54.9% of all of our grade 3 students met. So that overall is
Yes.
all grade 3 students.
Yes.
Right, so all
Everybody.
grade 3 students. And then the additional columns that you see of the students who tested, that's why that test takers is there, the percent of those students who met proficiency in each of the years.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Let's continue with that.
Next slide, please. So we, while our recently exited students are doing well, we do know that we need to continue our efforts to ensure that our students who are currently in program continue to grow in their language development as quickly as possible. We do know that they need time, but there are measures that we can put into place to ensure that they are growing in language and in content. And one of those intentional moves is around co-teaching and co-planning. So English language development teachers are co-planning and co-teaching across grade levels K through 12. This strategy is not one that is easy by any means, but it's one that provides access to our students on grade level standards, and instruction with language development supports being provided in tandem with content instruction. Professional learning continues to happen happen for our teacher leaders outside of English language development around best practices for co-teaching models, and effective co-planning. And just to note, ensuring that we are reaching our content teachers, not just our ELD teachers, was part of our action plan that was presented in January, on January 11th's special populations meeting around supporting what the Center for Applied Linguistics charged us to do in terms of shoring up our English language development program. And so we continue to think about ways that we can engage with our content teachers and provide that professional learning. Also new this year, our high school resource teachers now have availability in their schedules to be able to serve as an instructional leader, model co-teaching, and co-plan with other content areas because our department provided extra release time for them so that they can not only teach students, but also serve as a leader of their departments and across other content areas. Next slide, please. One other measure that we implemented this year, and it started again with intentional professional learning this summer. We provided professional learning on a functional language approach. The goal of a functional language approach helps emergent multilingual learners learn how to use language while they are learning other subjects, like English language arts, math, science, or social studies. With their teacher, students look at how words are used to share ideas. This helps them to see the hidden rules of the English language. Instead of learning language first and then content, emergent multilingual learners now learn them both at the same time. They read and work with real text at their grade level without the need to lower the rigor of the text. One of the ways this works is through something called the teaching and learning cycle. In this cycle, students and their teacher look closely at a text to see how the words help the author share their message. Then the students try writing their own text using the same techniques. This method can be used in any subject, because all subjects use language that needs to be taught clearly, especially for emergent multilingual learners. This professional learning was intentionally implemented with our secondary schools, our instructional leadership teams at the middle and high school levels. And so we are focusing this learning there, but our elementary teachers are also getting instruction on a functional language approach as well. I will now turn it over to Ms. Diana Wiles, who will talk to us about the measures for special education.
Next slide, please. The data on this slide is reflected similarly as the data on slide 5 for our EML students, where you see the overall and the proficiency rates for our students receiving special education services for the 22-23 and 23-24 school year. The distinction that we want to point out here is that when we look at data for our students receiving special education services, we have to look at our students who are working towards a diploma and our students who are non-diploma or receiving a certificate of completion. So in this slide, you'll see, for example, our grade 3 students were 26.3% proficient for all of our students who are working towards a diploma. Our students who are not working towards a diploma take the dynamic learning maps, and that was a 5.4% proficiency. There is no assessment for our grade K students who are working towards a certificate of completion. That is a low percentage rate, but what you have to think about is that these are our students who have the most significant cognitive disability. So in 3rd grade, they may be working on identifying numbers, identifying letters, writing their name. So it really is an assessment that is geared towards where they are and what their needs and how we're meeting their needs with their accommodations. Next slide. The core work of special education really is in specially designed instruction. Most people, when they think about special education, they know about providing accommodations, giving extra time, providing assessments at the best time of day for students. But the bigger, the more important piece of that is specially designed instruction. So how are we adapting or modifying curriculum for students with IEPs so that they can access it appropriately based on their needs? So it's three things: content, methodology, and delivery of instruction. The content is the what. What are we teaching them that is either adapted for our students who are working towards a diploma or modified for our students working towards a certificate of completion in a way that meets their individual needs, but still continues them to progress in a general education curriculum. So it could be an intervention that we use along with the curriculum. It could be the use of differentiated curriculum materials so that we're meeting them where they are and addressing their goals and objectives on their IEP. With regard to methodology, it's the how. So are we utilizing different resources? Are we using things for students who are tactile learners that need touch? Are we using things that help them to understand the literacy skills better based on their individual needs as reflected in their IEP? And finally, it's the delivery of instruction. So who's teaching them where and when it's being taught? Is it a special educator? Is it a general educator inside of general education? Are we pulling them out of class because they need a really small setting? Because we need to continue to redirect or repeat or reteach certain skills? Or are we able to utilize our general education classrooms where most of our students are who have IEPs and use small groups in those settings, or have a special educator work directly in a co-teach model with the general educator to provide those services? Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Logan.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So as we've heard again today, we continue to stress the importance of professional learning to meet the needs of our students receiving services, our emergent multilingual learners, our students receiving special education services. Because before we can expect our teachers to support our students, to see that data really improve, our teachers really need to be equipped with the skills of how to best know their students and then the knowledge to implement the strategies to support their literacy growth. One thing to really note about the professional learning is that we're not providing professional learning for the sake of professional learning. We are continually monitoring the impact of that professional learning. One thing that we started last year and we're continuing this year is the use of impact reports. And so through our evaluation of the professional learning that we're providing, we are collecting data on the impact of the professional learning. We're following up, as we are just doing this week, with continuing to assess the professional learning in the implementation stage by going into the schools, talking to our leaders, continuing to provide ongoing professional learning, and then seeing the impact in the classroom and in planning. And so that impact and that data that we will continue to collect throughout the year is going to help us to be able to evaluate how that professional learning that we provide is being used to change teacher practice, and then what are we seeing, how is that manifesting in the student performance? Is it giving us the results that we are seeking? So I think that's really important. We heard, I'm sorry, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you so much.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Are we also in that impact data, are we going to see if we should be doing the trainer model, or if there should be another way to deliver? the training? Does
Yes.
that make any sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And that's something that we are constantly trying to identify the best ways to do that. You know, with the system as large as we are, we're always thinking of how can we get directly to teachers, right? A lot of the professional learning that we provide currently, we have our leaders that we work with, and it is more of a train the trainer. Often we work with our reading specialists, our content specialists, who lead those departments at the middle school level,
Sure.
right, and resource teachers at the high school level. We provide them monthly professional learning, and then they go into schools, maybe they work with staff development teachers, they work with the teachers. We do have other models like office hours where teachers can come and get professional learning more directly, other opportunities after school, but we are always looking for ways, and oftentimes, you know, it does depend on the budget to be able to do that, because those opportunities will be provided after school. Yeah. We are going to have a district-wide professional learning day coming up, and a lot of that teachers are accessing that learning because there are asynchronous opportunities. So we're thinking creatively in that way to be able to reach teachers directly as well.
Okay. I only ask that question because we could make the assumption that how I receive or perceive the training versus how I give the training could be totally different for the end user who's receiving the training, right?
Absolutely.
So, like, how do you evaluate that in addition to?
Yeah, and that's a really great question, and that's why working collaboratively to have teams to create those materials. So if we can be really clear on what the goals are, centering the needs of our EMLs and our students receiving special education services, we are all on the same board, that is our clear focus. And so working together so that the professional learning we provide really hones in on that is helpful in ensuring that message is consistent across the board. So thank you for that question. And so just to give a few examples of how we do that, you heard Ms. Hewlett talk about the functional language approach. Just this week, we provided learning this summer to administrators where they had the opportunity to focus on gaining a deeper understanding of students in special populations and then examine specific literacy and math strategies to support their success and think about how the strategies and look-fors that they were learning about could be applied to their school improvement plans. And then they can think about how that then connects to the learning they received with the functional language approach that Ms. Hewlett talked about. Another way that connects is we talked about over 300 teachers received training this summer on literacy strategies to be used in content areas at the secondary level, where those literacy strategies are expected to be used across the different content areas. And so these are proven effective for our EMLs and our students receiving special education services. So that learning continued just this week when school-based leaders came together to discuss progress with implementation of that, including the functional language approach. So it is ongoing. We go to the next slide, please.
Mr. Savarna had a question. Okay.
Sorry, but it's the 2 slides ago when we're talking about specially designed instruction for students receiving special education services. I just wanted to ask, the question about, how are we making sure that students are, receiving grade level appropriate material or instructional opportunities, not just on a, specific individual by individual level, but like systemically, and like ensuring that that material is accessible for students with IEPs the same way that students without IEPs would have access to that material.
The way that we address that is that we use one curriculum. So even with our students who are not working towards a diploma, they still are accessing materials in CKLA. The majority of our students with IEPs are inside of general education the majority of their day. So at the last data that we received from this state and that we reviewed, about 70% of our students with IEPs are accessing instruction inside general education. So they're working and learning beside their non-disabled peers. Where we make changes and adjustments or adaptations to the curriculum is what the special education teacher works with the general education teacher to do. But we don't change the curriculum for them. So whatever the standard is, whatever the goal is for all of the other students in that classroom, if I have an IEP, I'm still working. If it's comprehension that day, if it's a vocabulary component of a lesson, I'm still, as a student with an IEP, working in that lesson and working on that goal. But my special educator and my general educator are adapting it to meet my individual needs.
Got it. So from what I can understand, it is like the goal is the same, but the process to get there is slightly different. And is that process school by school? Because you're mentioning like a special education teacher and a general education teacher working together for that. So that's not standardized across the county?
So in all of our schools, we have special educators that work with students who are working inside general education. And in all of our schools, we have students who are inside general education. In some of our schools, we have programs that are designed for specific needs of students who might need more than what is provided in general education. So we have autism services, we have self-contained classes for students who may be working several years below grade level, who may need additional support because of behavior and for various other reasons. That is standardized throughout the school district. Where you see some differentiation, which is required, is individual students. So what Dr. Logan may need as a student with an IEP may be different from what I need as a student with an IEP. And schools have to look at that together. Special educators and general educators have to look at that together to figure out how to meet those needs of individual students. But that in that process, you don't change the standard, you don't change the curriculum. You change, as you said, the process or the approach.
Got it. Okay. Final question. Yeah, I understand that. So my final question kind of just is, so across the programs, they would have a standardized curriculum, but in the individual schools, for the individual students, then that's when the curriculum starts to be, not the curriculum, sorry, the process, or I guess, or the content starts to be different.
The process, not necessarily the content, because everyone's working in the same curriculum. So yes, it is based on student need. So you may see students learning a little bit differently if you go into a different classroom, even in the same school. Across schools, you may see some differences, but that's what the mandate of IEPs requires, is that you individualize how you approach instructing students who receive services.
Got it. And okay, I think that makes sense to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions, and maybe I'll start with the special ed, with the grades. So we talked about also the EML with special ed. What's the breakdown of that in these numbers? Or is that in Tamara's number with the third grades, or is that separate? Do you know what I'm asking? Okay.
You're asking about proficiency rates for students who are both duly identified as EML and special education.
Correct.
And Ms. Hewlett can provide that information for you.
Okay.
So your question was, when we looked at the data slides, students who received ELD services, whether or not they were duly coded, they show up in those data. And they also show up on the special education data because they were pulled apart as students receiving special education services. So there are some EMLs reflected in those data because we were looking at students receiving special education services. And then there are some students, all of the students reflected on the EML slide receive ELD services, and some of them are students who receive special education services as well. No. If you want the percentage of how many students per grade level, So in kindergarten, we have 472 students who receive English language development services and special education services. In third,
I'm sorry. Can you, again, thank you. Dr. Taylor got me.
We'll have to do this as a separate data request, but this is a good one, and it's tracking the performance of dual identified and making sure that we can account for that. So we can do that.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question is because of allocating resources, because we're going to be talking about budget in the next few weeks. So the reason I want to do that is because at least sometimes when I have visited in the last few weeks elementary schools, right? At least my observation is that a lot of the classrooms are anemic in the sense of having support for a large classroom that has a large EML population. Like you have one teacher, right? And we're expecting that one teacher to kind of do it all. So as we're thinking about where we are with populations of special ed and EML and where the disconnects are, or where we can bring more resources into the classroom, although I appreciate giving folks materials, but sometimes you might have to put more boots on the ground. Right, more support. It could be a para-educator that is trained in EML. It could be a special, ed person that is trained so that can help in the classroom, who also is EML. So you know where I'm going with this. So for me, those data points are important, because I remember last year one of the comments was that the largest population that we're seeing in special ed is also EML and special ed, and then we had a lot of kids who are EML with IEPs and 504 plans. So I just want to make sure, because it's not reflected on this, the ratio of EML teachers. What is the ratio of EML teachers and how many students each EML teacher has, like we do with other groups. So that, I will be interested, if you know that, please tell me. If we know what's the ratio.
right now, it's close to 1 to 40.
Okay. So back to my point then. If we were talking about a regular classroom, we already think 1 to 20 is a big classroom. 1 to 22 students in a room, right? So can we just be very honest this year in saying that as much as we can put a lot of things in writing, we can do a lot of materials, we can do a lot of training, but if we don't have boots on the ground to be able to do the work that is meaningful so we can make some of these changes and make some of these outcomes better for our kids who are truly struggling, I just feel we're going to be going around in circles. So, and that's why I asked about the ratio, because I know EML teachers are super burned out because they, that's a heavy load to lift with children who, let alone, are trying to learn a new language, are trying to adapt. You have behavioral issues, there's just a lot going on. So I just want us to be conversant that we can do a lot beautiful things in writing, but I just want to see what the practical plan is. And I think a lot of the community members and others also want to see what is the plan, how we're going to tackle it, how long is it going to take, and then most importantly, by when are we going to start seeing some of these results? Thank you. But I know you guys are awesome, and I know you guys are working on it. But again, you cannot do miracles if you don't have the resources. So I just want to, see that, we're going to be in very close budgetary situations, but I think we're going to have to be very direct and calculated where those resources go.
And Ms. Yang has been, had her hand up virtually for a while, so we're going to turn to her.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I know we all have time for more questions, but I really want to congratulate our teachers. It's impressive to see the newly exited EML students and how well they are doing at the standardized assessments. So thank you for everyone's hard work on that. Now, my question goes to special education. Dr. Peel at the beginning mentioned that for our CKLA, our new language art curriculum, that special education has access to online resources, but they do not have paper copies or physical materials in their classrooms. So my questions, I have heard community feedback on challenges shared by these teachers in terms of material availability. I'm wondering if someone can shed light on how are we helping, how are we supporting these special education teachers, going to Mrs. Wiles' point that each one is unique and different process. So what are we doing? How are we handling this?
I'll take that one. And so you're right, we had to do a first phase of making sure that all students had their materials and that all teachers who were directly responsible for the learning had the materials. We also knew that we trained people on differentiated materials. I sat in the ELD training this summer, and so there are additional resources that are available. Unfortunately, when we're going back and forth with the vendor, creating customized resources was not an option initially, and so costs exceeded what we were planning to expend on that. So we still can look at what customizations we need, because if you're a co-teacher and your teacher and your students have the resources and materials, it is a barrier to sit there with your computer and have to look at it unless you're sitting right next to one another. So we are looking at ways to cost effectively address this issue.
So I think this is this is an important point. So when we have all our teaching staff, right? How do we make sure, ensure that our support is also equitable, regardless of subject matter or the level of schools they're teaching? So I look forward to a resolution on this issue, and we'll like to continue this dialogue.
Ms. Wolf?
I just have a data request. I noticed you said you could tell how many EMLs were in the special ed numbers. I wanted to know the proficiency rate for the Black students that are in these special ed numbers. So can I get the number and the proficiency rate? Thanks.
Okay, let's continue with the slides, please. Let's hold our questions till the end.
Okay, I'll just briefly. So here we were just talking about curriculum materials. So there are embedded curriculum supports. Here on the screen, you see what teachers see in our new Amplify CKLA materials. Again, all elementary teachers receive training this summer. That does include our English language development and special education teachers on how to locate the resources in the curriculum to identify these additional supports. They include things such as vocabulary to emphasize in lessons that can support students who are acquiring the English language. They also include opportunities for small group instruction and partner work, things that really can support teachers in planning and also in delivery of instruction. This is for Amplify CKLA. Similar supports are also embedded in our middle school study sync curriculum and in other curricular resources that we have within our ELA curriculum. If we can please go to the next slide. I will now turn it over so that you can hear what this looks like on the ground to Mr. Brent Mascott, principal of Weller Road Elementary School.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Brent Mascott, principal at Weller Road Elementary School, and we are delighted to be here to talk about how we support and engage our emergent multilingual learners, our EMLs, and students receiving special education services. The information on this slide shows demographic data for Weller Road, as well as highlights growth for our EML students, special education students, and all students in kindergarten and third grade. From spring 2023 and spring 2024. We would like to highlight a few areas we feel have contributed to our students' success and growth. First, as building leader, it starts with me. I set the expectation with our whole staff that it is not the sole responsibility of our ELD or emergent multilingual development teachers or special education teachers to serve students. It is a shared and collective responsibility of our whole staff to best serve our students. During pre-service week, all staff members meet with our ELD team and special ed team to review English language plans, IEPs goals, objectives, supplementary aids and services, to make sure that all of our staff understands the needs of our students. And this continues throughout the year as students arrive at our school or are newly identified throughout the year. Furthermore, all of our professional development that we have is connected to growing the staff capacity for supporting our EML and special education students. We really want to make sure that what we know is our main focus, that remains the main focus throughout the year. Including, we really focus on elevating and highlighting the knowledge and skills that our ELD teachers and special ed teachers utilize with students, so that, again, all of our staff understand these key best practices and are well-versed in using them with students. In addition, all of our school improvement goals are centered around growing our EML and special education students, so that, again, we can stay focused and aligned and connected throughout the year. We also want to make sure that our school structures are in place to best support our students. So, for example, our master schedule is developed with our EML students and our special education students in mind. So our literacy blocks, our math blocks are staggered throughout the day so that we can really utilize those best practices in co-teaching with our classroom teachers, our ELD teachers, our special education teachers, and our co-teachers. That's where the real work is, so we make sure that that can happen throughout the day by staggering those instructional blocks. We also stagger when our teams collaboratively meet, so that, again, all of our key staff members, our classroom teachers, ELD teachers, special ed teachers, can all be available and actively participate when we study the curriculum during those planning opportunities. And now I'm going to turn it over to our fantastic reading specialist, Jennifer Falcone, who will talk a little bit more about our planning and professional development structures.
Good afternoon. At Weller Road, we invest our time and our energy into collaborative planning and professional development, knowing that the academic achievement of all of our students, but particularly our dually identified students, and our students receiving free and reduced meals will only improve if the staff apply what they've learned and start to see the positive impacts on student achievement. It is for this reason that we conduct regularly scheduled walkthroughs to look for evidence that the instructional strategies and routines that we've discussed are being implemented. We debrief with teachers and teams afterwards to discuss the impact of collaborative planning and professional learning on students' academic achievement. This year, we are implementing our new core knowledge language arts curriculum, and grade level teams are engaged in weekly extended planning meetings to develop a shared understanding of the new curriculum and to plan for the utilization of engagement strategies, such as a turn and talk with a partner, and instructional routines such as providing sentence starters that are orally rehearsed prior to the turn and talk to increase the student engagement and support the language development of all of our students. So, for example, at the kindergarten level, the students were reading The Tortoise and the Hare, and the teacher posed the question, why do you think they decided to race? So prior to asking students to turn and talk to each other, the teacher gave them the sentence starter, the tortoise and hare decided to race because, and then they practiced that orally multiple times before they turn and talk and share their ideas with a partner and then out with the class, so that they're getting multiple opportunities to develop that language and also support their comprehension because they're listening to their peers' ideas in addition to their own ideas. During collaborative planning, we discuss possible misconceptions and plan explicit instruction to clarify the learning for all students. This includes showing images of people, places, and activities to build background knowledge, acting out common verbs during the read aloud to build that comprehension, and engaging students in retelling of stories to extend the language development. We also discuss the diverse perspectives of our students and how to support them in making connections to the text. Each teacher plays an important role during our weekly collaborative planning. As they work to plan for that co-teaching model in any given content area. Our English language development teachers share instructional strategies that will support the language objectives and development, along with instructional resources from the Language Studio materials that they have access to. Our special education teachers share scaffolds and instructional strategies that will ensure learning objectives are accessible for all students based on their IEP goals. The reading specialist facilitates the meetings and shares instructional practices that encourage student engagement and discussion. And classroom teachers share instructional routines and practices that connect the learning and language objectives to the content in order to bring these lessons to life for our students. During collaborative planning, all teachers discuss which parts of the lesson they will lead, which co-teaching models they will employ, and which resources they will utilize with their students to make that learning accessible and engaging for all. During the past year, we've been able to tailor our professional development to meet the needs of specific grade levels by utilizing our biweekly professional development sessions. Some of the topics that we've discussed are case studies of emergent multilingual learners, increasing speaking opportunities for students receiving English language development and special education services, co-planning and co-teaching structures, and then specified times for that co-planning to take place, studying speaking rubrics to support the planning for levels of questioning and engagement, increasing student engagement across all content areas, and data analysis to help plan for small group instruction during our focused instructional time, or what we call the FIT block. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us share a little bit about our story and the way we do things at Weller Road. Before I turn over to Dr. Pugh, I do just want to take a second to give a shout out to our staff. They work extremely hard. This is hard work, it's important work, but they are just deeply committed and engaged and invested in this work. So thank you to the Weller Road staff. So Dr. Pugh.
Yes, and thank you for that. That gives us also, the hope when you see that something you're doing and working as a collective school, that it makes a difference for your students, then you continue to learn and implement. So thank you for being here and sharing your story. And next slide, and with that, I will turn it back to the board for continued discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. At the beginning, you started with some ifs, thens. And are these what they're captured here on this final slide? Yes. So if we do professional learning, if we have curriculum materials, if we have continuous progress monitoring, is there anything else? Did I get that right?
Parent engagement. That's an area that we've been working on for parent and caregiver engagement to make sure that we are actually reaching parents and providing helpful and useful information. So this is your plan of action. If you do these things, you expect to see change in this school year. That is correct.
For Mr. Mascot, congratulations on your great outcomes. Yes, it is your leadership and the hard work and dedication of a staff at the school level that make this happen. Dr. Pugh, we always love to see great models, but the question we're going to ask, right? How do you replicate this? How much of what is happening at this school is happening across the board in the school system? We'd love to see gems, but what we want to see is a gem at every school. So what are you telling them to do that they're doing as a best practice that we can replicate across the school system? Because we don't want every school to have to invent things on their own.
That's correct. Great point. And we're just going to clone Mr. Masterson. No. The answer to that is this is our action plan. This is what we've been training for. This is what we're looking for when we go into classrooms. So it is what Weller Road has done with the information that we provided and the supports we provided and the ongoing monthly training is exactly what every other school gets. So what it looks like in each school is slightly different based upon the decisions that they make as a school. For example, the master schedule It's a huge piece. You have to be able to fit in time for people to do the planning. You have to be able to make decisions around the best interest of your students. So these are the practices that you should see at every school.
But isn't there best practices in master schedules that align with the best practices in instruction? They shouldn't have to make that up, right?
Right, they're given the guidelines for master schedules, and they're also given, and in their school improvement planning, they're looking at their unique data for how they prioritize their use of time, but there are guidelines that we give for the number of minutes.
Okay. Last question, and I'll pass it on to my colleagues. Mr. Mascott, back to you. What do you think made a difference in these two academic years?
I would say just keeping that main focus of our EML students, special ed students, our duly identified students, keeping that as our main focus throughout the year. So whether it's our professional development, whether it's, like Ms. Falcone was talking about, the work that we do in our curriculum planning, everything is about how are we best supporting our students, and if staff needs something to help them with that, then that's on us to provide that professional development. So I think that the big thing is just keeping that focus throughout the year in every action that we do.
Thank you. Ms. Harris.
Yeah, thank you. I think this may be a clarifying question going back, and apologies if you covered it and I didn't quite understand. I'm thinking back to our conversation back, I believe it was in April, maybe it was in March, when this item for the CKLA curriculum purchase came to us. So I think what I understood you say is that we've purchased this K, or is it pre-K or just K? Pre-K 5, so elementary grade, English language arts curriculum, core knowledge, language arts, and it is one pre-K to 5 curriculum being implemented in all schools for all students, regardless of whether they're receiving they're an emergent multilingual learner, they receive special education services, they're in, an alternative outcome type program, so they have very intensive needs, but it's all the same curriculum. There is no different curriculum for emergent multilingual learners, different curriculum, aligned but different for special needs students. It's all the same curriculum. Just one curriculum.
That's correct.
Okay. But I think you also said there that the vendor has, maybe I misunderstood, has versions of this curriculum that are specialized or could create them if we, yeah.
So this is a comprehensive pre-K to 5
Yes.
Curriculum that we purchased through our conversations, not only receiving feedback from teachers, but also conversations with the curriculum vendor. We have learned that they were able to work with us after, again, taking the feedback from the teachers to provide customized classroom student materials for teachers of students pursuing alternate learning outcomes, or in our ALO classrooms. Those are the ones that we have procured. Okay. And so customized classroom student materials for ALO teachers have been designed by the vendor and have been delivered to those classrooms.
So our alternative learning outcome teachers in the elementary grades have received a specialized version.
Right.
They have received it already and been trained?
They have received those customized student materials with K2 and 3-5 bands for those students, and they have, I'm not sure if the training has happened yet. I know we have Malika Brown in the audience, but that is something that is ongoing as we're receiving the feedback and working with our vendor. Working to implement these materials across all of our elementary schools while really taking in the feedback from not only our principals, but our teachers has been a huge task. This feedback that we're taking from our teachers, we're taking very seriously. And the Amplify CKLA has been really wonderful in listening to us, working with us in real time, but it's been a process. And so as we are learning and working, and we also are working within the confines of the budget, right? But we were able to do that for our ALO students.
Okay, because I know we had this conversation last spring, and I recall actually working as a paraeducator last year in several highly impacted classrooms. I remember particularly being at Westover Elementary, and at that time, you know, there wasn't that kind of resource for those teachers in those highly impacted classrooms. They really were just expected to make it up, and so that's not happening anymore. We have delivered to our alternative learning outcome elementary teachers this special version of Amplify curriculum for their use in their classrooms, and the professional development around that is proceeding?
Ongoing.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And what I really, and just building on some of the comments from my colleagues, what we really need to know as we're moving into budget season is, what do we need that we do not have to ensure our teachers have everything they need? Because if they don't have everything they need, they can't deliver everything our students need. So I really want to make sure we are crystal on what we do not have but need to do the best job we can for all of our students. And I have a question for you, Ms. Falcone. Could you share a little bit about how the practices you've just described and the methods that you're using, and it sounds like it's very sort of routine that's been built into the work at Weller Road, how that is different from what you were doing before?
So that's an interesting question for a couple of reasons. This is my second year back in the reading specialist role at Weller Road. I was previously the reading specialist for 5 years, and then I went back to the classroom for 5 years and spent 7 years as primary talent development before coming back to it again. So it's been a change to come back to this role, and certainly in that shift from primary talent back to reading specialist, I worked together with the administration, the staff development teacher, the math content coach to develop this shared structure that allows not only our reading and math blocks to alternate or be staggered, but our focused instructional time block to be staggered so that we can utilize all paraeducators, all special ed teachers, all ELD teachers, focus teachers, classroom teachers, so that you have 10 to 12 people coming together at this focused instructional time to work with all of the students within a grade level, so that small group instruction that is targeted to exactly what they need based on the data they've collected is able to happen on a daily basis. And it's been very powerful. But because that structure exists, it also means that we can meet with grade level teachers for every other week to provide ongoing professional development based on what we receive at our training, based on the data that we have, based on our school improvement goals, so that it is really targeted to what they need. And if what kindergarten needs is different from what first grade needs, then they receive different professional development within the same day.
Okay, interesting. So just echoing, again, comments from Ms. Silvestre, you've clearly, this is not a like throw something against the wall, see if it sticks approach. It's very thoughtful. You've been very, very intentional in creating everything around the way you schedule, the way you plan, the way you implement, the way you interact with the teachers and do walkthroughs. It's about again, instead of leaving it to all 138 schools to figure it out on their own, and I'm looking in the back and I'm seeing Dr. Moran and Dr. Redmond Jones, how we are making space for schools who have really elegantly done this work and figured things out to share that best practice with their colleagues across the system, to highlight and elevate, so that we are supporting. Are we doing that? I'm getting a head nod. I'm getting a shake. Okay, good. Because it is really, I think, important to create that 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 professional collaboration, not just within, but between schools. Thank you for what you're doing.
Just a quick follow-up to that. All schools have the new curriculum, but the two-way immersion schools, the new curriculum is one resource among many that they have to use to meet the biliteracy standards. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And similarly in the one-way immersion programs as well.
Ms. Yang?
Yes, first of all, I would thank Mr. Mascot and Ms. Falcon for coming in. I have been to your lovely school many times and always so impressed by what I see over there. Now, my comment is that I think intervention is most effective when we shrink the distance between the central office and the classroom. And so by school leaders taking actions, we, at your school, you have successfully done that. The trainings, the best practices are happening in your school. So echoing all my colleagues, I would like to see that be a system-wide approach. So, and today I think one takeaway I have is that our professional development is crucial for our classroom, tier 1 classroom instruction. So coming up, we will have more discussion, in-depth discussion in our Special Population Committee in January, looking at professional development in our EML students. And then subsequently in March, we'll look at it for the special education students. So I hope this is, and we are all doing it all hands on deck, and then all these best practice will go into every single classroom. Thank you.
With your special education presentation, I heard a lot of best practices, but not that things have to be new, this shiny new thing. I don't expect that. I think best practices are best practices. But what's going to move the needle? Like, how are we going to get our special education data to improve? What's your theory of action this year?
Professional learning. To what Ms. Yang just said, we have to dedicate the time to providing professional learning to our general educators in a way that we haven't done in the past. My department 2 years ago established a specially designed instruction unit. So we have a supervisor that is specifically working on professional learning and implementation of specially designed instruction in schools. She has a team of staff that works both with students who are non-diploma and students who are working towards a diploma. Part of the challenge, obviously, is always not enough people to do a tremendous amount of work. But within that unit, they're going into schools, they're doing they're doing job-embedded coaching, they're working with teams to help them to be more proficient with how we look at an IEP, break that down in a classroom, explain how general educators and special educators can work together more closely, how to co-teach in more efficient ways. So that is really part of the significant part of the work that we're doing in the Office of Special Education, and specifically in that unit to support our teachers, because as I said, most of our students are inside general education.
Yeah.
And so the way we move the data is by supporting the teachers that see the students the most so that they understand how to work with them in their classes.
Yeah, and I think this emphasizes again the need to work with our higher education partners to make sure that they are teaching special education practices and EML practices in the teacher education programs. Because we have to constantly train people to do what is the work of teachers nowadays. These are our students. Special education and English language learners are a vast majority of every graduate is going to have special education and EMLs in their classroom. So how can they not cover that in university is beyond me. But thank you for that. One of our testimonies talked about the Cal report. What did we learn about the Cal report, and how are those learnings integrated into our work with EMLs this year?
So the Center for Applied Linguistics, they made a lot of recommendations, and we have been actively working to address many of those recommendations. One of them was professional learning, and so with us getting the Cal report a year and a half ago, we turned that around. We had professional learning for all elementary ILTs last summer. This past 2 summers ago, this past summer, we requested the funds to be able to do that for our secondary teachers. So we are taking a lot of those. We're trying to increase our staffing. That's another recommendation, our ELD staffing. So little by little, we're trying to add more ELD teachers. But we know that our students are spending most of the time in the content setting, so we have to really focus on our content facilitators to make sure that their capacity is built as well. They made some recommendations for some technical aspects. They made recommendations about SLIFE, which is why we requested the SLIFE program evaluation, the students with limited and interrupted formal education. That's our METS program, as most people know it. So those are our students who come to us with interrupted education, most of them through the international office. And so to get a better understanding of what the current state is, we requested a program evaluation for our middle and high school SLIFE program. So we are trying to get the information and operationalize many of the aspects of the Center for Applied Linguistics report.
Thank you. My final comment is just a comment about rigor. We've heard also testimony and emails about making sure that all of our students have access to rigor in the curriculum, that that the curriculum gives them opportunities to reach for higher level content, and that should be the case for EMLs and special education as well. They are very capable of learning. We have to push them, support them, but push them because they can learn, and that's how they're going to grow. So,
I have a comment.
Ms. Wolf, yes.
I just have a question. I was listening to Ms. Yang talk about coming back, I believe she said in January at her meeting, to talk about the strategies that you're using to improve the outcomes for EML, free and reduced price lunch and special ed students. When exactly are we going to have the discussion about improving outcomes for Black students? And I'm not trying to pit one group against the other. I just want to know what specific strategies are we doing for Black students, because they don't fall under the Special Populations Committee. And so there's never really, to me, a focus there. And yet their numbers are extremely low, embarrassingly low. So when will we have that conversation?
I mean, I think the board can request a presentation.
Well, I think we should. I also, I've been talking to our chief of staff because I'm very concerned about our use of the term Special Populations Committee. To me, that has negative connotations. They're all our students, and maybe we ought to rebrand that committee to focus groups or equity groups or something, so that we also have a focus on Black students, because they're not the focus of that committee, and they always seem to be left out of discussions. Thank you.
Yep, we can do that. Seeing no other lights on, thank you so much for the presentation. Very important work, and thank you for our school-level staff for being here, taking the time from your busy days to come and to present your great work. So thanks again. We will now move on to our next agenda item, item number 8, which is about the blueprint. And we are going to ask Shannon Pettyfoot. She is the board's analyst to begin with giving her overview, and then we will turn it over to Dr. Taylor.
Okay, good afternoon. I did some analysis on the blueprint, specifically where MCPS is in terms of making progress and some comparison to other districts. So the blueprint for Maryland's future was first passed into law by the Maryland General Assembly in 2021. The state will increase funding over the next 10 years, but it does require significant local contributions. It's meant to enrich student experience and accelerate student outcomes, as well as improve the quality of education for all children in Maryland. The first pillar is around early childhood education, which focuses on pre-K expansion, expanding both Judy centers and Patty centers throughout the state. Judy centers focus on our youngest of children, and Patty centers focus on providing support for those children's parents. Currently, we have 2 Judy centers in Montgomery County, with one application that was just recently approved to open a 3rd Judy center. And Montgomery County also has 1 Patty center in the county, and that is currently housed at Jessa. Moving on to pre-K expansion, for FY24, we had 260 full-day pre-K seats that were added. In FY25, which is this current school year, we planned an expansion of pre-K general education from half-day to full-day, and the addition of self-contained pre-K special education classes, but that was delayed due to budget constraints. For FY26, it would be important to look at expanding those half-day seats to full-day seats. And then in addition to pre-K expansion at the school district, the blueprint also requires the expansion of pre-K through our private providers. Okay. Pillar 2 focuses on high-quality, diverse teachers and leaders. The first way that it does that is that it looks at raising the starting pay of all teachers. MCPS met that requirement July 1st of 2024. We have a beginning teacher salary of about $62,000. Comparing that to some other counties, Howard County met that requirement within the same time frame as MCPS. Their minimum starting salary for teachers is $60,000. And then Frederick County and PG County have not yet met that requirement, with teacher salaries starting on average at about $56,000. In addition to that, there is the issue of national board certification. The teacher of record or classroom teachers can receive $10,000 for their NBCT. They can also receive an additional $7,000 if they're at a low performance school. As of FY24, per the state count, MCPS has 478 NBC teachers that qualified for the state or for the stipend, and then the state provided us with about a third of the cost in terms of funding. In comparison, Howard had 187 teachers and Frederick had 54. PG County had 284. Currently for FY25, so this school year, MCPS has 700 teachers working towards that certification. Additionally, for teachers that have that certification, they also can qualify for stipends. And then if they maintain their status, they're eligible for additional increases. We're currently looking at this. Those amounts do have to be negotiated. That is in the process. There's also the 60-40 ratio, where we have to have a plan for teachers to spend 60% of their time in their classrooms in front of students, and the other 40% of their time is to be not in front of a classroom, but doing things like planning, mentoring, potentially tutoring. Moving on to Pillar 3, which is college and career readiness. The state has 2 parts of that. So preparing students for college, preparing students for career. Here in Montgomery County, we look at college, career, and community ready. Based on the state standards, by the 10th grade, all students should be college and career ready. I'm not going to take you through the long list, but there is a list of metrics that the state has defined to be ready. That includes various specific scores on English assessments, as well as math assessments, as well as PARCC and MCAP. From a career readiness standpoint, we're looking at having to have 45% of high school graduates achieving industry credentials or completing an apprenticeship by the year 2030. Currently, we have had 3.7% of our class of 2024 meet that requirement, and we're projecting that 5% of our graduates will meet that requirement for the class of 2025. As of right now, that isn't a sustainable rate for increase. That is something that I think we should look at as we move forward with the blueprint in terms of what is feasible. Pillar 4 talks about more resources for students. We're covering that through our community schools. We now have 53 community schools in the county, and the state provides what are called concentrations of poverty grants, which fund services to those community schools. And then the last pillar is Pillar 5, which is governance and accountability. That pillar lays out the various mechanisms to achieve successful implementation, such as expert review teams across the state, as well as an accountability and implementation board. Are there any questions on what I just shared?
No questions, thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor?
It's a great segue and a great follow-up to some of the financial implications of the blueprint. It is kind of our hot topic of the last several years and going into the next several years. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Pugh, who is going to talk about some of our challenges, but also some of our successes. Montgomery County Public Schools is leading the way in the blueprint in Maryland, and we have come a long way, and there are some things that we can be very proud of, but there are some things that we also need to decide about our level of investment relative to what we can get from the state as well. Dr. Pugh.
Thank you. And as I was listening, I checked off all the things that I had in my opening remarks for my first slide. So in order to not be redundant, I would double down on a few things. We are doing very well in terms of making progress. In your board packet, you see a list of deliverables that probably doesn't make much sense to you, but it is long, exhaustive, and we are accountable to both MSDE, to the Accountability Implementation Board, to our county, and to our board, and to our citizens. So it is a huge body of work that can transform our public education system. I think the piece that I will double down on is that career ladder development is going to be a challenge because it does require more people, more time, and it also comes with a requirement to negotiate to get to that point. I do also want to double down on the financial allocation because to do an infrastructure that allows us to follow the student, follow the funding directly to the student, that is going to be a change, right? It's a state change. It would have to be a local change and very, very technical work to make sure that we're aligning and able to report out. Finally, the pre-K expansion, you know, though costly, it is also essential because that gives our students a quick start, a good start, that they start ready for school after completing pre-K. Right now, we've been able to focus on our most needy students and their families. The way the law is written is 300% to 600% poverty level. So that has been what we've been trying to do, is to expand in those areas where families can access the services. And so next slide. We are in full implementation. We are ahead in many ways, but also working through the challenges of clear and consistent guidance as we work to do what the law intended to do. So I'll go to the next slide and pass it to Ms. Backey.
These are the 5 key blueprints.
These are the 5 key blueprint pillars, just a reminder for those viewing. The early childhood education and expansion, high quality diverse teachers and leaders, college and career readiness, including CTE, more resources to ensure students are successful, and governance and accountability. So these are the 5 key areas of the blueprint. Next. You heard an overview regarding the pillars, and just to reiterate the expansion in pre-K, we were also just awarded a Judy Center for FY25, so congratulations to Weller Road. You heard from the principal earlier, but this will be a planning year for them in expanding Judy Centers in Montgomery County and providing comprehensive early childhood services, so we're really happy about that. And some of the challenges we continue to face are, working along with many community partners to try to increase the number of private providers and private programs who are eligible to access Blueprint funds. There are a number of early childhood stakeholders in Montgomery County. There's Children's Opportunity Alliance, Montgomery Moving Forward. There's an Early Childhood Education Steering Committee, Health and Human Services. We work closely with many of the child care associations, and we have strong partnerships with a number of child care programs. So we're continuing to work through those, and we're continuing to work to advocate with the state for additional supports for our private providers who are really working hard to be able to be eligible to access the Blueprint. Next. Pillar 2, we've had lots of progress. You've heard about the increased teacher salary, and we've actually met that 2 years before the requirement. We are constantly expanding our number of nationally board certified staff in MCPS. We have the largest number across the entire state of Maryland. This year we'll be doing some heavy lifting. We'll work on Career Ladder Level 4 and the administrative track. We have completed levels 1 through 3, and we'll be working together along with the employee associations to roll out the planning for our Level 4. And then also, once that plan is in place, we'll have to negotiate the compensation associated with that according to the Blueprint. And then work out our rollout plan for the 60-40 teacher planning ratio. We are supposed to be getting some allocation from the state, perhaps to provide additional teachers, but I think all of the school systems across the state are concerned about where we're going to get the teachers from, because there's a teacher shortage going on. And then we need the time to do the effective negotiations. And I think one of the things that came out of some discussions with the Accountability Board is that the school system's calendar, our calendar for when we do negotiations, may not be exactly aligned with the AIB's timeline for all of this process. So school systems are working closely to try to meet all of those deadlines, but sometimes negotiations take time. Next slide. College and career readiness, including CTE. We have launched our career advising. The board has heard about that. We've done that through a process along with workforce development in Montgomery College. We've had 268 high school students who've graduated with a high school diploma and an associate's degree from Montgomery College, and that's really a lot to celebrate. We have a large CTE course enrollment, and then you can see the other numbers for our other programs that students have been enrolled in. The state's CTE committee, it's important to note, is going to be looking at a review of some of the different pathways and industry recognized credentials, taking a look at any pathways that may not have industry recognized credentials, and determining which of those perhaps we could work with the business community to develop a set of industry recognized credentials. So there's going to be a lot more information coming out from the state CTE committee, and they will be visiting MCPS in the late spring for a college and career ready site visit. And then we'll continue to work on our partnerships and to build up the work-based learning. There is a potential to build on, work with perhaps some of the Summarize employers that we have. I think we have 248 of those, and potentially an additional 100 who might come on board this year. So there's a potential to kind of take some capacity building and be able to maybe expand some of those employers to develop more work-based learning opportunities that meet the state's definition for apprenticeship. Next. Pillar 4, this past school year, we had 34 community schools that were providing wraparound services to our students and families. We had an additional 19 that came on board, so now we have 53 community schools in Montgomery County. We've added a few additional social workers to our social work cadre, and we're also participating in a national research project that's looking at the behavioral health supports. I believe the board has received a presentation on that a few months ago. And then, we're really looking at all of the various programs and projects that exist that are associated with Title I, community schools, duty centers, other wraparound programs, and really just trying to make sure that we can find space for all of these various projects to coexist within the schools so that we can provide all of the services that our students and families need. Next. And the last pillar, Pillar 5, governance and accountability. In 2023-2024, we submitted all of our legislative reports. As you know, there are reports at different levels that MCPS reports out on to the governor, to the Maryland state legislators, and the Accountability and Implementation Board and the Maryland State Department of Education. We're rolling out through the Blueprint Division Office professional development related to the Blueprint. We're calling it Blueprint 101. We've been rolling that out, and we're actually working on a module that was requested by the county government to do some training for their staff on the Blueprint. We have submitted some data into the Power School, which is the application that the state is using where school systems are loading in information. And we're continuing to collaborate with internal and external stakeholders. We're continuing strategic facilitation. We have had 9 expert review team visits this last year, and we have 15 additional ones that will come online this year. This year, we have 15 schools. They're all elementary schools, and the focus will be on English language arts or math. And we also had successful literacy visits within the last year. And we're going to bring together and stand up our Blueprint implementation team, which will have a steering committee model, which will look at the state preliminary outcome measures, our MCPS progress towards those goals, and we'll be able to gauge our progress and our compliance with the Blueprint state law, as well as gather input, work with our employee associations and others, and then determine which areas we may need to revisit and take a look at our progress towards these benchmarks that the state has identified. Next.
So this is a huge law, and most districts have one person who's working as other jobs and other duties as assigned. So I do very much appreciate that we have Ms. Backey dedicated, because it is going to require both short and long term, right? There are things that are due now and immediately, and there are dates all throughout the year that are rolling. So we need to coordinate that. And in a system this large, being able to coordinate that and make sure it's a priority and lift it is critical. We also have strategic facilitators who are here to help us. That's part of what the legislation required, and it is helping us to understand not only what MCPS is doing, but what other districts across the country are doing and other districts in Maryland. We do want to continue to plan with our internal and external stakeholders. One of the pieces that we need to do is be very public and very transparent about this report. Not that anyone wants to read it, but the implementation guide is online and available on our website. It is huge. And we know and start to internalize what each of the pillars means. And so we just need to make sure that as we're talking about each of these areas, our families understand and know what we're planning and why we're planning it. And then again, in order to access all the benefits from this, we have to make sure that our students meet their math and literacy goals in order to be able to access the college and career readiness standards. Next slide. So there's a lot of interconnectedness. I think you can't do this in isolation. It's not a simple project. Each pillar has multiple measures in it, multiple measures that we're accountable for, multiple reports that are due, and work that needs to be done. But you can't do one pillar pillar at a time, and you can't do pillars without knowledge of what other pillars are doing, right? It doesn't make sense to talk about the 60% of a teacher's doing teaching time and not lump that into how does that impact our need to expand pre-kindergarten, right, to full day classes. So this graphic just shows there's no one priority pillar. They are all interwoven. Next slide. And so with that, we'll turn it back to the board for discussion.
Thank you. Just a quick question. The career ladder level 4 work, what does that involve?
The Career Ladder Level 4 work will develop a pathway for lead teachers. Levels 1 through 3 are really beginning teachers, teachers working on their master's degrees, teachers getting nationally board certified. And when you start to get to level 4, you are defining, the blueprint defines it as a lead teacher who will have specific roles in the school, and also the pathway for becoming an administrator. So that's where level 4 leads to, and so that's the work that we really need to do this particular year, to pick up at the start of level 4 and go beyond all the way through the administrative pathway. So that's what has to be developed this year, and then negotiated for any compensation that's associated with that.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is about assessment. So we're in year 3? 3. Can you talk about how all this is being evaluated? For example, community schools. That's been a big investment. You just gave us the increase in numbers. What's the evaluation like to make sure that the resources that we are allocating for this is making a difference in student achievement?
Well, there is, it's twofold. One thing is that there is annual reporting that the community schools do, that they submit to the state of Maryland, which also goes to the accountability board. So some of the individual programs have annual evaluations. Judy Centers have an annual evaluation, Patty Centers. And then on sort of a macro level, the state has an outcome measures work group, which is developing specific outcomes that they will use to determine whether or not school systems are successful in the implementation of the blueprint. Those measures will likely be finalized by the end of the fall, but they include things such as grade 3 ELA scores, grade 3 to 8 ELA and math scores, student attendance, rates of chronic absenteeism, the number of diverse staff that school systems are able to draw in that sort of mirrors the student population, retention of teachers in their first 3 years. So they have a specific set of metrics that they're using to gauge whether or not school systems are meeting the blueprint. And then the Accountability and Implementation Board is undergoing, by statute, undergoing a complete evaluation of the entire blueprint across the state of Maryland.
I'm interested in the ELA and the math and the attendance. So that is already in place there
already? That's a part of the outcome measures that it's in a preliminary phase. It's been presented to the Maryland State Board of Education, and then there are a few other outcomes. They're looking at kindergarten readiness assessment and other things,
so
but
we
they
don't know
still
if
haven't
it's making
developed
a
the
difference
metrics yet.
We don't know if it's making a difference yet.
Not yet. They haven't measured it, but we will be using our local implementation team to take a look at those proposed targets and to review our data and see how we are faring in meeting the expectations of the blueprint across the state. So that will be happening over the next few months.
Implementation is one thing, but is it making a difference is another.
Right. And we will be looking at those data points as well as our own MCPS data points. But we will be able to gauge our progress pretty soon.
Dr. Pugh?
I was just, let's use the community schools example. When the community schools funding came to districts, there were very little guidelines other than develop a needs assessment and ensure that it has wraparound supports. And here's the funding. You must have a nurse. That's a required staff and a community liaison. All fast forward, like that was how it started. Fast forward to now, there are very stringent requirements for what you must submit and how you must use the funding. So they have learned as we've gone, so the rules have changed each year. So I just want to use that as an example to say what it started out as was, let's try it. And now what we're getting is And it was really, let's try it, you submit what you want, we'll pick what the best is, and then we'll say that's the new rubric. And we're in that evolving process. I do feel that the state is getting tighter on what their requirements are and their reporting requirements to determine, is this impactful? Because they, like you, are interested in, we're investing a lot of funding, how is it making a difference for our children and their families? Thank you. Ms. Harris?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple things for me, and I'll just start with Pillar 1, pre-K. One of the things as we're moving into budget season, which we've all been talking about, we've all talked about pre-K expansion. And I just will be very interested to see us focus. These were questions that came up last budget cycle that we never got good answers to. We really want to see that the demand, instead of having an arbitrary expansion, we want to see the demand and make sure that our expansion is designed to create a supply that meets the demand that we have, whatever that is. Now, maybe we won't be able to quite get there. We won't be able to meet all the demand, but I just want to make sure we are not being overly ambitious given the current need as we are continuing to roll this forward. So looking really closely at demand and supply so we can be very, very, very intentional when we talk about this, when we're talking about our budget. And I'm wondering, we know nobody is meeting the public, none of the 24 LEAs are even coming close to meeting the blueprint's vision for public and private shared pre-K provision. And one of the things we hear about routinely, including at the pre-K event that we went to a week ago over at Montgomery College, is the state is, on the one hand, putting forward these ambitious plans and goals and putting some guidelines in place, but they're not attending to their own house when it comes to the bureaucratic obstacles that exist within the state infrastructure. And so this is me. I'm not making my observation. The overly burdensome and bureaucratic processes that lead to teacher, pre-K teacher certification and licensure and facility certification and licensure. And are we working with, I would like us to be advocating with our Children's Opportunity Alliance partners, being very, very specific with the state with recommendations, instead of just saying this is broken, fix it, but saying here's the experience of people who are trying to navigate the system. Here are the pinch points. Do this to fix it, do that to fix it, coming forward with a set of recommendations and urgently, because we have proof that we cannot meet the blueprint goals and vision in part because of state obstacles. And so I think we need to be really, really clear about that. Instead of the LEAs having the AIB point the finger at the LEAs, the school systems, and say, you're not doing it. Say, we need to be closing that loop and identifying the why of it, because it's not that people aren't trying, mostly. I know we're trying. I assume most of the other LEAs are as well. And a question, when we're looking at the college and career readiness, and that, as a former CTE teacher, that 45% of graduates having a credential, I think that's amazing, that goal. That goal that we get there, we're very far from that, is amazing. But we have, again, same thing, ambitious goals, plans, well-intended, great vision, but the state is not owning the obstacles it creates for students to do that. Because I know as a CTE teacher, if you look at graduation credit requirements, there are many obstacles in our current graduation credit structure in the state of Maryland to students taking advantage of one of these CTE programs that lead them to a license or a credential. Not least of which, where I taught at Edison, if you participated in an Edison program, and in the program I taught, it was students that made a 2-year commitment, but it's a triple period. It's not a class. It's a triple period. So it's 3 periods a day those kids devote to Edison for multiple years. And so just looking at that reality, and then the kids only get maybe an elective credit and the box check for a completer. That's ridiculous for that level. They have to sacrifice so much to be able to take advantage of that. If we want our kids to take advantage of it, we need to remove barriers, not leave them in place. And so we're, as a board, are going to be talking about some of these things. The tech credit is one. Math every year you're in high school is another. But a similar thing is when you look at these courses, graphic design at Edison or CAD architecture, those courses should be, kids in those programs should get their fine art credit for them as well. Mm-hmm. If you are taking cybersecurity and network operations, if you have to have a tech credit, those should count. My course, we embedded in it a college-level anatomy and physiology course. The CASE program at Northwood and Sherwood, it's hard, it's 4 years long, mm-hmm. and it's embedded with environmental science and agricultural science. They can't get a science credit. That, again, is an obstacle and a barrier, and it doesn't make any sense. And so the explanation that's been given to me by the State Board of Education and MSDE is this arcane double-dipping rule that they claim is embedded in Perkins funding, which is federal, which funds a lot of our CTE, not all, but a lot of our CTE programs. If that is true, if it's Perkins funding and its structure that is preventing students from being able to get a fine arts credit if they take graphic design, or a science credit if they take ag science or environmental science, then that's another area of advocacy that we need to direct federally. But I'm hoping that we are connecting the dots in those ways, because everything is interconnected, and we are not going to be able to meet these goals unless we're much more pragmatic in thinking about not just what the school systems have to do in the classroom with students, but the infrastructure we have to create around that to make that possible. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing, Pillar 4 is all about the special, making sure that we are providing adequate resources for all of our students to succeed. And this goes back to our last presentation. I still have concerns, a lot of concerns, that we are not adequately supporting our teachers, especially if we're just talking about the new Amplify curriculum with our ELD teachers and our dual language teachers and our special education teachers. We are not supporting them well enough to deliver this curriculum. And I'm hearing from teachers and principals both that are very, very concerned that we have all these expectations around this curriculum, but those teachers that need that specialization to help them deliver the modifications and the accommodations, they're sort of being given like a guide and said, here, figure it out. And we talked about professional development, but I really want to see if we're talking about, yes, we have a special version of the curriculum for our alternative learning outcome students, and we're working on professional development. I want to see, not now, of course, but I really do, in the very near future, I want to see the plan for that, rolling out that professional development. I want to see a timeline, and I want to see how we're measuring what those metrics are, so we can make sure that every teacher that needs that support is getting that support, and we're not looking at summer still, maybe we'll get to it in May, because that's a year lost for these kids. So that I really would like to see a plan. Thank you.
I can quickly acknowledge what I heard and what I know about what I heard you ask for. So you asked about, is the demand there for our pre-K students? What I would say is, as a county, we have a 40% poverty rate, and those families qualify. We are serving far less than 40% of our families in our pre-K services. Some of the state barriers with bureaucracy and helping our private providers to meet the Excel's rating and some of the things that they have to do, that is definitely a challenge. Not to mention the challenges, the feeling in the state that we're competing. And there is a very real sense from our private child care providers that we're competing for their students. So we have work to do in that area. In terms of the approach for expanding pre-K and engaging with our Children's Opportunity Alliance and other partners, that is very much what we're doing. We have 2 members on their board, or soon to have 2 members. We have 1 now. And it is a county approach. And it's a county approach because the public school system cannot possibly, feasibly, with its own facilities and funding, do what has been asked and set as a goal. With regards to the graduation requirements, lots to unpack there, but what I would say is something new in Perkins is that they are really looking at trying to align course sequences so that they are much more similar than dissimilar. For example, the first 2 courses would be the same, and then as you get into a higher specialty area, you would take a more specialized course. What's important about that is the opportunity to actually earn the industry-recognized credential, right? Because some of them you can take right after you're finished your 2nd or 3rd course. Others you must wait until completion of the full program, and there's timelines and requirements there. It is intentionally built, like you said, to make sure that students don't double dip, that they actually meet their graduation requirements separate, and then CTE, which is a part of the graduation requirements, is seen as separate. Some schools have listed it as, like you stated, a three-period course. Others are teaching the same course in a single period. So design-wise, what the state work that we've been working with, or not me, the team has been working with to design these courses so that there's much more parity. The other piece is that the industry-recognized credentials that are approved by the CTE committee, it went from 600 to 200. And so we are in pretty good shape. Most of ours do align to either AP IB or AP dual enrollment or to an industry recognized credential, but we do have pathways that we need to look at to try and build that out. The piece that was new and different, we've been working as a state on building out youth apprenticeship opportunities or work-based learning. What part of the CTE committee did was make a requirement for that 45% is for a work-based learning credential and or a CTE industry recognized credential. But inside the apprenticeship model, they have now put a requirement for an industry recognized credential. So it's not just work experience, it's work experience that leads to. All good theory, it all does lead to a value for students, that they have something portable that they can walk away with and walk immediately into the work or to continue education. But again, it is a lot of work occurring on the state. And then I think you said the actual resources, for our CKLA. So I want to be clear about what I meant about modified curriculum. They sell a set of teacher resources that includes many, many things. Things for advanced learners, gifted learners, EL learners, boost learners, supplemental materials, and it's a lot, and it's very expensive. What we have in our learning centers is teachers who are teaching bands, grade bands, like K to 2 and then 3 to 5. So rather than buying them the $2,000 teacher kit for each single grade that they might meet, we need to know, or we needed to communicate that what the teachers needed was actually those grade level pieces so that they could pull as appropriate for the groups of students that they have. So that was the modification. How we're using them, this whole year is planned and is going to continue to be responsive to what our teachers say about what's working and what's not working and about what they need. So we're very invested in making it work and making sure our teachers do have what they need. And right now, the teachers that you mentioned, they all have access to the exact same plan book. It's just not a physical copy. It is online. It's not less than, it's the exact same. So I just wanted to, I think I hit most
Thank you,
of
Dr. Pugh. I
Sorry.
appreciate that. Ms. Rivera-Oven.
Just very quickly, a lot of this is a lot to be able to accomplish, and especially, so I'm not going to talk about pre-K because we already talked about that, but in Pillar 3, so I'm a bit concerned about meeting the goals for 2030, and I don't think we're the only school system in the state. I think everybody is having that issue. But for me, it would be helpful to have an understanding, especially as we're entering the budgetary times, like to have a comprehensive budget for each of these pillars, right? Currently, what we have. And especially in Pillar 3, I'm very interested to know what we're doing because, as I'm thinking to last year, some of the things that we cut, like, we didn't have the automotive program for Damascus, for example, but then that's part of Pillar 3. So, and then in Pillar 2, when we talk about our teachers and leaders, diverse and so on, our grow your own is in the blueprint. But yet last year we cut a grow your own. We eliminated, because of budget reasons, the grow your own grow on from the Office of Human Resources. So what are we doing maybe to bring that back? Or who's doing that kind of work to be able then to be aligned with what, the blueprint is kind of guiding us to do? Because those are, key positions that we need to think, futuristic, the things that we should be looking at that is going to be helping us to meet these goals versus, we have a very budget constraint, so we're going to cut these things. And that might kind of, later on, we're shooting ourselves on the foot. So I just want us to have a little bit more comprehensive certain things that we need to keep to be able to meet these goals.
Thank you. And if you reminded me, Ms. Rivera-Oven, the memo on the blueprint that's on board docs gave a price tag of what this is expected to cost. Am I remembering it was in the realm of 45 million?
I believe the memo showed how much we invested, if you will, for this current fiscal year. For FY26, MSDE has hired a consultant that will be working on looking at all 5 pillars across MCPS and helping to cost out what they think that will cost for MCPS. Simultaneously, our budget team will be is in the process of doing the exact same thing so that we can compare and contrast. But as of today, we do not have a dollar amount of what this is going to cost, and a large part of that will look like what do we move forward with in the next school year to know how much we're appropriating to understand what that budgetary impact will be.
So the strategic facilitator that we have been assigned from the AIB is APA, Augenblitz, Palek and Associates, and they're currently working with our Blueprint team, the Budget Office, and others in a Pillar 5 strategic facilitation work group. So by the end of the year, we should have some estimates for FY26 and 27, and then by the end of the school year, by June, we should have a preliminary cost out through 2029. So we're in the process of working on that. We're gathering data and information that will be used to help develop that formula and that module. So within a few months, we should be able to have some cost outs for 26 and 27. The things that we cannot account for are the governor's budget. We don't know, there are some variables that we're not sure about, but we can put some estimates in there and take a look at it. So we'll have something this year.
And our budget needs to be ready in 8 weeks.
Right. Right.
So I just wanted to make the point that this is a huge budget item. It's required by state law. We want to implement it, but we do have very serious fiscal constraints. So
we do, and I just want to also add to that I think that we look at when we look at the allocations that come from the state, they might say for pre-K there's a particular per pupil cost, and they may allocate it in that way, and that's how they determine how much they're going to give. But it also doesn't include a lot of the infrastructure and the capacity building. And I think those are the things on our local operating budget side that we have to absorb, because those are the things that we need in order to be able to be ready to implement. And those are the things that the state is not covering. And so I think helping people to really understand that, what we need to roll out pre-K, what we need to roll out a joint registration system with the county government, all of these things require lots of capacity building work around it. And so those are also local costs that we will have to assume from Montgomery County.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate Dr. Taylor putting this on the agenda for today, because it is important for the public to understand where we are and where we need to go and the budget implications as we prepare our budget for this year. Really quick, yes.
I just had one more thing to add, that Ms. Harris mentioned about the forum at Montgomery moving forward, and that was a kind of a broad-based, wide representation of early childhood stakeholders across the county, and they have an advocacy platform, and they'll be using that to go forward to advocate with the state and the AIB. And they're also looking to have the state's workforce development board take a look at early childhood education as a whole in terms of its role in helping to support the workforce. And also, Montgomery County government has a cost of care study that will be rolling out in the next few months, and it addresses other local issues such as pay disparities and co-pays and some of the other difficulties in terms of the credentialing and pieces for childcare. So that's more to follow, and we are working closely with them, and we're also advocating with them. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much for the presentation. We are now going to move on to our next agenda item, action on board policies, and I will pass it to Mrs. Madrasky.
Yep, hi, thank you. So on behalf of the Policy Management Committee, bringing forward to the full board recommended technical amendments to policy ACF, sexual misconduct and sexual harassment of students. These amendments are necessary in order to comply with the recent changes to federal law, and we've got some examples of that stuff here. The committee met on September 17th to review the recommended changes, and the excerpted version of the Federal Register, which guided these changes. These technical amendments change the title of policy ACF to sexual misconduct and sex-based harassment of students, and affirm that the Board of Education does not tolerate sexual misconduct or unwelcome sexual behavior or harassment of any kind. Pursuant to our board policy BFA policy setting, the Policy Management Committee may recommend that the board immediately adopt technical amendments to policies when the proposed amendments are needed to comply with federal law. So that's what we will be doing today. Accordingly, a public comment period is not required for technical amendments. So we will do final action today. Before we get started, I wanted to see if any of my colleagues had any questions. We do have our folks from legal department here. If anybody has anything that they, no?
Nope.
Okay, great. All right, in that case, then let me just read the final resolved. And resolved that the Board of Education adopts technical amendments to Board of Education Policy ACF, sexual misconduct and sex-based harassment of students, as updated in the attached committee recommended draft. All in favor? Oh, because I'm the chair and I'm presenting it on behalf of the committee, we don't need a second, so I can just take a vote. So, all in favor? And that's unanimous. Wonderful. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Madrasky. We are now moving on to agenda item number 10, which is for informational purposes only. Item 11, can I get a motion to move 11, 1, and 2 in block?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Ms. President.
And that's unanimous.
Ms. Silvestri, I did just want to mention something about for the superintendent about the legal fees report. I continue to be concerned by the increasing amounts over last year. So if at some point we could get a little bit of a briefing on what's happening and what we're going to be doing to address that. Thank you.
Then item number 11.3, we have minutes from the September 24th meeting to approve. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. What is that? Is that a new?
It was the SEIU meeting. That was the SEIU meeting.
Okay.
On the 24th.
Thank you. Thank you.
We always do it that way.
11.4, board members, do you have any new business to bring forward? New business?
Just to mention, I just wanted to thank the students of Lakewood Elementary. I think all of us got a big packet of thank you notes from them for the new playground equipment that they received. So I will be
I
coming
didn't
to
get one,
take
but
a look.
that's lovely.
But yes, thank you, Lakewood Elementary.
Just you. No, just kidding.
All right, item number 12. Mr. Serrano, you have your light on?
Nope. Nope.
Okay. For informational purposes only, item 13, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. We are now adjourned.